Hey guys, welcome to Green Bean Fiction. So in today's video we are gonna see, what if Deku inherited the Blacklight virus? Part 4, Final. Before starting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you are interested in MHA fanfictions. This story is Izuku Midoriya, the reincarnation of Alex Mercer by DummyWearingAHoodie. Now without wasting any more time, let's dive in. With Class 1A previously, now. How about round 2? Mercer said, causing the creatures with him to roar as they charged forward. The class were in shock and shaking in fear as the hunters growled in their direction. How could they forget that he can do this? Looking over at their class representative, they could see the sadistic smile on his face. Something that didn't look good on his face, but at the same time fit him. Before any of them could do anything, bandages wrapped themselves around Mercer's body and neck, tightening the hold on the Blacklight user. "Surrender now, or I'll choke you to death," a voice said from behind him. Turning to the owner of the voice, the mock villain saw Shinso, in his full black costume, similar to a racer head. He also has the scarf around his neck. He could see the uncertainty in the boy's eyes. The mock villain smirked. "Do it," he said quickly. Shinso's eyes widened when he didn't feel Izuku's response triggering his quirk. Narrowing his eyes, he spoke up again. "Tell your hunters to stand down," he said while pulling the scarf harder to tighten the hold. Hunters. He knew something was wrong as soon as Izuku's smirk grew wider. "Charge!" he yelled, breaking free of the scarf with ease. He lunged towards Shinso, who was still surprised at this scarf getting destroyed. "Fuck!" Shinso mentally yelled as he tried his best to jump away from the verdette. Transforming his arm into his muscle mass, and Mercer punched the indigo-haired boy on the cheek, sending him flying to the building wall, with a loud thud. The hunters charged forward to the other students, who frantically avoided the creatures as the mock villain made his way to Shinso, who was trying to stand up, albeit shakily. As the green-haired teen was about to attack Shinso, a wall of ice stopped him from getting close. Looking to the side, he saw Todoroki clutching his side. He was about to charge at the dual-haired boy, when a kick hit him from behind, courtesy of Iida, sending him flying to the direction of Todoroki. "Now, Todoroki!" he heard Iida yell, making him look over at Todoroki's direction, who began summoning a large wave of ice to his flying form. Landing hard on the ice wave, ice shards and dust particles exploded in the area, making those around them close their eyes. As the dust particles slowly dissipated, they noticed that Todoroki was limping forward, clutching his sides. That was the same time where the hunters slumped down and turned into piles of tendrils. The tense atmosphere lightened up as they began cheering. They had won and passed the exam, but no announcement of the end of the exam was announced. The teachers were on the edge of their seats as their eyes were glued to the screen. Even if it looked like Midoriya was somehow defeated, they knew better than that. Even the impatient present Mike didn't say anything as they watched Todoroki emerge from the smoke cloud and the rest of Class 1A beginning to celebrate. Waiting in anticipation as they wait for Midoriya's next move, completely forgetting that this was supposed to be an exam. Through the celebration, Katsuki narrowed his eyes as he stared at Todoroki, who was limping towards Melissa of all people. He expected Icy Hot to go to round face or four eyes or even ponytail, but not towards Melissa was oddly suspicious. His suspicion was warranted when he saw Todoroki's unconscious body lying on the ground as the smoke dissipated, the direction where Todoroki came from. The imposter began smirking as his heterochromia eyes turned red. "Gizmo girl, look out," he called out, propelling forwards to the girl's direction. Said girl jumped at the yell and barely dodged a claw slash to her palm. Channeling 10% of One for All as her body was enveloped by yellow sparks of lightning, she sent a kick towards the imposter, who slowly turned back into Izuku. Shoot style. Texas smash. The kick landed on the boy's left arm that he used to block the attack, causing a shockwave to explode from the two students. The attack didn't faze the Blacklight user, who was about to punch the blonde girl if it weren't for Katsuki sending an explosion to his face. Seeing that the mock villain is stunned, Melissa used this chance to grab Mercer's arm and hurled him across the street. The verdette landed on a nearby building, crashing into the glass window. Seeing an opportunity, Katsuki yelled out, "Everyone, fall back," he said as he propelled towards Todoroki's unconscious body and carried him away. The class followed suit as they booked it out of there. In this situation, regrouping is the most logical thing to do. The class were nowhere to be seen when Izuku emerged from the building he crashed into. Shaking off the glass shards on his body, he used his sonar senses to look for his classmates and spotted them immediately. He was about to run after them when he looked over at his arm and saw blood. His eyes narrowed, he couldn't remember if he even got injured or anything. Wanting to make sure, Izuku channeled Blacklight and consumed it with the tendrils swirling around his arm. He waited for memories to enter his mind, but nothing came. Shrugging it off, Izuku walked towards the pile of mass that came from the hunters. He intentionally made the creature desummon to make his classmates drop their guard. It worked, but not fully. Consuming the two piles, he walked towards the other one and touched it. The pile began pulsing before it came back to life as a brawler hunter. The creature looked over at its master and waited for orders. Izuku huffed in amusement. Looking straight to its eyes, he spoke up. "Brawler." The monster perked up as a smirk formed on its master's face. Smash. As soon as he said that, the creature roared before jumping away towards a nearby car and began slashing and pounding on it. Its loud crashing sounds echoed in the area as Izuku sat down, in a meditative position. "Let's see what my dear classmate's planning now," he thought as he closed his eyes and activated Hive Mind. Class 1A realized that Mercer got their backs against the wall. Sounds of crashes rang out in the streets as the class jumped, ran, and swung over a broken-down car. Looks of uncertainty can be seen on some of their faces as they hear some of the building's glass windows crash as roars coming from the hunter filled the place. "Are we far enough?" Iida said, panting as he looked over at Jiro and Shoji. Plugging her earphone jacks, Jiro closed her eyes as Shoji extended his dupli arm. After a few moments, the two nodded. This made them sigh in relief as they groaned at their injuries. Katsuki slowly placed down Shoto, who was beginning to gain consciousness. He slumped down the walls as he hissed in pain while wiping the blood coming out of his busted lip. The plan didn't work like how they expected it to be. Screw that, he knew damn well that the plan wasn't going to work in the first place with Izuku's overpowered quirk, even with the limiters on. Ever since the exam started, Class 1A had been in a disarray of arguments and misunderstandings. There had been a problem with the planning portion before the start of the exam. You see, during the planning portion, Momo, being one of the smartest of the class, suggested that they should all split up in 4 different groups going in different directions as a way to make it hard for Izuku to attack all of them at once. With this strategy, the class will be able to cover a lot more ground and be able to finish the test. Katsuki nodded at the idea but asked for different suggestions since her plan was a bit too risky for those with non-combatant quirks and lacks experience in fighting. Toru also pointed out that Izuku has thermal vision, making it easy for him to locate their direction. Kirishima then suggested that they take Izuku head-on and overwhelm him with their numbers advantage. A suggestion that Katsuki immediately declined on doing, arguing that Izuku has more experience in fighting multiple opponents and in fighting in general since he is now a pro hero. That's when Melissa suggested that the class surround their class president and overwhelm him with attacks to somehow weaken him and for them to easily capture him. A plan that Katsuki doubted would work but couldn't say anything due to his classmates' agreements. Something that he would regret right now. That damn nerd got us good, he got us real good, he thought as he took a deep breath before smirking. So what now? He heard Shinso ask, panting slightly and hissing at his bruised cheek. What's the plan? The class looked over at Momo, who was a bit pale due to her overusing her quirk. She was looking down on the ground. They could see the look of frustration in the raven-haired girl's face as she slowly shook her head. I don't know, she shakily said as a single tear began to crawl down her cheeks. I don't know. The class looked over to the second smartest person in their group, Melissa, who was looking down thoughtfully as she wrapped bandages over her injured palm. The same frustrated expression can be seen in her face. As Katsuki was about to speak, Ochako spoke up. Himi, are you okay? Himiko can be seen head lowered as if she was sleeping, which worried Ochako, since the blonde girl suddenly was asleep. The brunette shakes the other girl, attempting to wake her up. Her attempts of waking her friend up was halted when Himiko suddenly slashed the knife in her hand towards Ochako, who quickly dodged her. The class jumped away as Himiko began to stand up, confused as fuck to why their classmate suddenly attacked Ochako. Her head still lowered. Toga, what are you doing? Iida yelled out to the girl. The others have the same thought in their minds. Their questions were answered when the transform user lifted her head. Class 1A widened their eyes to see the girl's yellow slitted eyes are now appearing in a crimson hue with black scleras. I'm sorry, but Himiko is not available right now. Please try your call later, Toga said as she lunged forward and began slashing her knives towards the group. The class were shocked at this, but the most shocked was Katsuki. He almost thought that Izuku had followed them and disguised himself as Toga, but seeing that she didn't use any of his abilities, it doesn't appear to be that way. It appears that Izuku had somehow controlled the blonde girl. Seriously, Midoriya, just how many skills can you just pull out of your ass to catch us off guard? He thought as he dodged a swipe to his neck. She began charging towards the closest person, Aoyama, who was still clutching his stomach. The self-proclaimed French student panicked and sent a laser towards the blonde girl. Ochako was worried that her friend was about to get hit. Luckily, Toga jumped over the laser and was about to perform a downward slash, when Shinso wrapped her with his scarf and pulled her down, letting Ochako pin to the ground. The brunette did her best to keep the pale blonde girl pinned using gunhead martial arts. Himiko kept on squirming for a few minutes until she suddenly flinched. What's going on? Himiko said, voice shocked and somehow back to her usual tone. Before the class could answer her and ask her questions for her actions, Present Mike's voice echoed throughout the area. 15 minutes left. This caused the class to suddenly begin panicking. They had no plan to somehow pass this test. Mina and Denki began to feel depressed. Their plans of being in the summer camp, the training, the test of courage, the campfire stories, and the most important thing of all, s'mores. Everything is getting out of their grasp. The others grimaced at their injuries. They had felt like they were just way out of Izuku's league and being toyed with by their class representative. However, Momo and Melissa were the most depressed looking as they, the smartest in the group, couldn't think of a plan. The latter of the two being that the quirk her Uncle Might had entrusted on her has little effect on their opponent. Though, it may be understandable due to her being new in using one for all. This highly affected their confidence. Katsuki saw all of this and clenched his teeth. Despite his change of character, he is still Katsuki Bakugo. He hates losing, and to see his classmates giving up without even trying annoyed him. However, even he is unsure on how to win this battle. This feels like a David and Goliath match. The only difference is their Goliath is on steroids and is more stabby. So what other way do they need to do to win? They could always escape to win, but that is a coward's way out of this predicament. At least for him. Looking over at his classmates, he furrowed his eyebrows to see that some of them were injured and exhausted. But he could still see the small spark of determination in their eyes filled with despair. Taking a calming breath to himself, he slapped himself in the face with his palms. Before turning his game face on, turning his head to his classmates, he scowled. This is getting nowhere. We need to go and fight him. As soon as he said that, he turned to the direction where Izuku was. Everyone looked at him with shock. He saw that Kirishima was looking at him with a look of concern on his face. Before anyone could talk, the explosive boy continued. But we need to do things differently this time. He looked at them and crossed his arms. Even from the start, I knew that the plan was going to fail. This caused gasps to echo in the area. Before Iida could confront him about not speaking up, Katsuki raised his hand. I didn't say anything because I didn't have an idea on what to do. Not entirely a lie, but who's counting? Seeing that our asses got kicked by the nerd, it's really obvious that I was right. This caused Momo to lower her head. Ochako patted her back, but to be frank, I think it helped us in another way. It made us realize that even with our numbers advantage, we can't take him head on. That damn nerd is way too crafty for his own good. I hate to admit it, but Izuku is not on our level, he said, looking at his closed fist. So what do you propose, Bakugo? Tenya spoke up, removing his slightly dented helmet. Katsuki looked at his palm before looking up to his classmates. I say we take him on from a distance. Crashes and roars still echoed as the brawler hunter tore down a two-story building. Mercer was still in his meditative pose, taking deep breaths as a way to calm himself down. The recent hive mind attempt was draining in his parts since it was his first time using it on a human, making it difficult for him to control. A minute had passed since Present Mike announced the 15-minute mark. He used this as a chance to be able to replenish his energy. Not his biomass though, he forgot to bring his protein bars. Something that may or may not have been accidental. His eyes then opened when he heard his flyer squawking from the sky. Looking up, he let it perch on his shoulder. Activating sonar senses, he was confused to see his classmates scattered around the area. Standing up as he consumed the flyer, he planned to ambush them. Before he could do anything, he saw movement from the corner of his eye. Looking over it, he was met with a barrage of pigeons and crows coming from 2 different directions. He was pushed back a few meters. Using pop-off, Mercer summoned dragon wings to cover himself up before flapping it as strong as he could to send the avians away from him. As he did that, he was forced to jump away as Iida charged him with speed unseen from the speedster. Evading a kick from the tall boy, Mercer noticed liquid on the concrete. Seeing that this liquid traced a trail from Iida, he was confused. That's until he noticed a mop of pink hair peeking out from the building. This is Mina's quirk. So she can now alter her acid's viscosity and acidity. A ghost of a smile appeared on his face. Impressive. His train of thought was interrupted when Kirishima, Sato, Ojiro, and Shoji suddenly emerged from the surrounding buildings. Something that caused confusion for the mock villain. How did they get here so fast? His question was left unanswered as he barely dodged 2 fists coming straight to his face, one being hardened due to Kirishima's quirk. Flipping over the 2, Mercer was met with a tail slap from Ojiro sending him flying to Shoji's arms, which tightened at him as he heard something click on his left hand. Panicking, he headbutted the taller boy, making the hold loosen before kicking him away from him. Jumping away from the melee students, he could feel his body weakening as his legs began to shake. Looking down his left hand, he gritted his teeth as he saw a different colored quirk suppression cuff strapped tightly at his wrist. The quirk suppressors that Nezu had him wear were black in color while this new cuff was silver. Raising his head, he was about to glare at his classmates when a wave of ice and lightning was quickly coming straight to his direction. Jumping to the side to avoid the incoming elements, he failed to foresaw the tape and scarf that latched onto his leg. No hard feelings, Midoriya. He heard Zero yell out before he was pulled back to the ice wall. His back hitting the cold surface of the wall of ice and the stinging feeling of the lightning coursing through his body. Tokiyami. Now, he heard Shinso yell, before the tape and scarf let go of him. As he was falling to the ground, Dark Shadow tackled him to the ground as another click was heard on his other arm. Using his free hand, he summoned an ember of Todoroki's fire quirk and slammed it on the sentient quirk. That caused the shadow to hiss in pain and retreat back to its owner. He stood up back to his feet, albeit shaking due to the lightning attack still having an effect on his body. Plus, the fact that he is low on biomass due to the added suppressors on his limbs right now didn't help him. Damn it, I let my guard down, he thought as did his best to balance himself. The mock villain glanced at the brawler's direction and saw that it was preoccupied with Tenya, Katsuki, and Melissa. Where are you looking at, Izuku? Widening his eyes, Mercer looked to the side and was met with a tongue wrapping itself tightly around his body as he was pulled away to the side. Tsuyu, he thought as he saw the familiar dark green hue of long hair. As he was being pulled, he felt a hand slapping him on the back. Looking back, he saw Uraraka looking back at him with determination. He could feel his center of gravity shift, the tongue around him loosen as he was thrown to the side. The momentum of the throw made him face the direction where he is getting thrown. His eyes widened when he saw a makeshift cage waiting for him with a Himiko holding the door open. Not wanting to be captured, he spread his arms out and used tendrils to attach to the light posts. The biomass stretched as he continued sailing to the cage. To his luck, he was only a few feet to the cage before he rocketed back as the tendrils retracted, throwing him away like an angry bird flying out of a slingshot. His classmates' jaws dropped at the green-haired boy. He had just dodged another bullet. Izuku panicked for a bit as he released his tendrils. He was feeling a bit exhausted due to his shortage of biomass. He began to overthink until he saw a glimpse of his brawler as it slapped Bakugo away. Seeing an opening, he used his glide to quicken his momentum. As he neared the brawler, he summoned his claws. "I'm sorry, BH," he whispered as he stabbed the creature on the head. His quirk's biomass began to wrap around the brawler's head. It pained him to hear the brawler shriek in pain as he began consuming it. Landing on the ground and fully absorbing the creature, Izuku could feel his energy being replenished. Looking around his classmates, he saw that they were shocked at what just happened. Channeling Blacklight to his arms, he summoned his shield. He was disappointed when he summoned his ordinary shield and not the spiked one, but shrugged nonetheless. It's better than nothing. He was about to charge his classmates, when he suddenly felt something inside of his body pulse forcing him to deactivate his shield. The same feeling that he felt back in USJ after he consumed the Nomu back then. The feeling that something was going to burst out his body. He began to cry in pain as black and red tendrils began to surround his body. Before he knew it, a barrage of tendrils escaped his body in different directions, crashing to the buildings and cars around him. His classmates frantically tried their best to either dodge the thing or block it. His yell of pain drowned out Present Mike's voice, announcing the 5-minute mark. As the tendrils stopped, Izuku was left there panting and confused. He had somehow achieved critical mass once again. It is him achieving an excessive amount of health or biomass consumed. This only happened during the USJ incident, where he used consume for the first time of his life. What confused him is how he was able to achieve critical mass at this point when he had trained himself in increasing his biomass storage, making it hard for him to reach critical mass. At least he chose not to reach it due to the destructive nature of it when released. He looked down at his arms and noticed the suppressors. Is it because of the suppressors? Is it because my quirk is being suppressed that it made me reach critical mass faster? He thought between pants. He was still confused at this when his head pulsed as visions of people began to appear in his mind, making him clutch his head. Appearing in his mind are 8 figures looking at him with shock and confusion. What he noticed first was a tall, muscular woman that looks like his mom, if it weren't for her black hair and a mole near her right side of her chin, below her lips. He then noticed a figure made of yellow mist, similar to the warping villain, that looks really close to All Might in his skinny form. He was about to approach the figures, when he felt hands grip his shoulders and made him stop on his tracks. Looking back, he saw Alex on his right side and a tall, muscular man with a shaved head and a small scar over his left eyebrow. The two looked down at Izuku with a serious expression, before shaking their heads. This further confused him as he looked back at the figures and blinked when he saw them fade from existence. As the figures faded, something akin to a hologram appeared in front of him. Within the hologram screen a bunch of what appears to be a bunch of viruses connected to each other. Something that made him raise his eyebrow when he read names of some of his classmates and people he knew, such as Shoto, Aizawa, Hamiko, and unfortunately Mineta. His thoughts were interrupted when something hit him on the shoulder. Looking down at it, his eyes widened to see 2 tranquilizer darts stuck on his shoulder. Panicking, he grabbed and pulled it off him. As soon as he did, his vision began to slowly swirl. Damn it, I got distracted. He thought as did his best to balance himself. He shook it off as he looked at the trajectory of the darts. There he saw Momo, Aoyama, and a pair of gloves Toru on top of a 2-story building holding what appears to be hunting rifles. It appears that one of them had missed their target as he only felt 2 darts. As he tried desperately to shake off the woozy feeling, Katsuki emerged from his blind spot and sent an explosion to his face. This sent his weakened body flying to the side as a barrage of nets shot from different directions hit him, trapping him. He tries desperately to break out of the nets, but his fading consciousness has other plans. Izuku took a few failed attempts, panting hard at the tranquilizer is getting the best of him. Slowly, he looked up and saw his classmates standing a few feet away from him. Their expressions ranged from uncertainty, fear, exhaustion, and determination. As he felt his consciousness fading once more, he smiled at his classmates and gave them a shaky thumbs up. Congratulations, heroes. You caught me. Those were his last words before he closed his eyes and slumped down as he let his consciousness slip. There was a moment with silence in the field as Class 1A stared at Izuku's unconscious body. They continued to look at him until the speakers burst out an announcement. The villain has been apprehended. The hero team wins. As soon as that announcement was called, the class erupted in cheers as they had passed. Everyone, even Katsuki, began yelling in victory as the girls began hugging each other. Summer camp, here we go. The girls plus Kaminari and Shiro yelled in their minds. Somewhere in Kamino, Tamura Shigaraki can be seen on the bar stool, silently looking over Izuku's picture from the sports festival. A glare can be seen through the eye that the hand on his face was covering. He hadn't forgotten his encounter with the hero student and how he had always been outsmarted by the boy. Albeit, intentionally or unintentionally. That brat, I'll make sure he pays for being a cheater. I'll disintegrate him to bits. Just you wait. He thought as he used his quirk to disintegrate the picture. The door of the bar opened and there entered a middle-aged man of moderate height and slight build. Said man has short gray hair worn parted to his right with side bangs above his eyes, along with a goatee on his chin. A small mustache and one of his teeth seems to be missing, leaving a gap in his grin. Mr. Shigaraki, I came here with the recruits, said man as he grinned at the decay user. Izuku finds himself waking up on the very familiar-looking rooftop carved within his mindscape. The same rooftop where he saw the mysterious figures. The same rooftop where he awakened tendrils. The very same rooftop where he met and bound souls with Alex and gained the Blacklight virus and converted it into a quirk. This rooftop brought different emotions into him, but the most notable was the feeling that Alex gave him. Hope. For him to be pulled away from the darkness and be given the light to continue his journey was something that Izuku will always be grateful for Alex and James, the latter for giving him the ability of tendrils and pack leader at his disposal. As he rose up to his feet, he wondered why he was in his mindscape. But his curiosity was halted when he heard shouting near his location. You fucking bastard, if I were alive right now, I would have killed you again. Oh, James, you know damn well that I let you win in our last fight. Looking over at the direction of the shouts, Izuku saw Alex and James standing near the edge of the building. The former has his arms crossed, leaning on the railing of the roof, while the latter was in front of the former with his fist clenched in front of his face, visibly shaking as a tick mark can be seen on his shaved head. Izuku could see Alex having an amused expression while James wore a glare towards the prototype. Though, he was confused how Alex could be here. If his memories weren't playing with, Alex already passed to the afterlife after transferring Blacklight into him. Also, how can James be here as well? He said, earning the attention of the two, who looked over at his direction. Ah, Izuku, fancy seeing you here. Alex smiled and approached Izuku, accidentally, bumping James's shoulder, earning a growl. We've been expecting you, he said as he approached the green-haired boy and gave his hair a ruffle. Really? He asked and got a nod from the former Blacklight wielder. Yes, it has something to do with your recent discovery, Alex said. Specifically, the web of intrigue, the interconnecting viruses that you saw last time. He paused before smirking, causing a confused look to appear on Izuku's face. More on that later. Let me introduce to you my dear friend, James Heller, he said and pointed to the other person on the rooftop. Said man growled and gave Alex a glare. I am not your goddamn friend, you fucking bastard. James yelled before looking over at Izuku. And I met the kid before. It was after that time he consumed that motherfucking abomination that looked way too similar to you, Mercer. Alex wasn't even fazed from the insult as Heller continued. But to make it formal, my name is Sergeant James Heller and I destroyed Alex Mercer, he said and crossed his arms. Barely destroyed, Alex added, earning another tick mark on the man's forehead, but didn't say anything. Izuku gave the man a slight bow. Nice to meet you, sir. I am Izuku Midoriya, the reincarnation of Alex Mercer, he said, whispering the last sentence. Though the two adults heard it and snorted in amusement. Heller looked at Izuku with scrutiny, causing the boy to shift awkwardly on his feet, before turning to Alex. I still don't believe that this kid is your goddamn reincarnation. He's way too polite to be you, he said in a blunt tone. Izuku fell down comically as Alex just huffed in amusement. At least he doesn't yell profanities like he owns the place. I'm pretty sure that Bakugo kid is your reincarnation, Alex said teasingly. The other man scoffs. No way in hell that suicide baiter is my reincarnation, he sneered. I mean, he's getting better at least. Izuku was cut off when James glared at him. Don't defend him. Right, sorry, he said looking away. Not really comfortable with the subject. Anyway, what's the web of intrigue again? He said, changing the topic. As soon as Izuku finished that question, a same holographic screen containing millions if not billions of interconnected viruses appeared in front of them. The amount was overwhelming, even for Alex. I could never get used to seeing that many memory fragments in my mind. Alex moaned as he unconsciously rubbed the side of his head. For once, I agree with you. Heller wincingly said, also rubbing the side of his head. Anyway, this Izuku is the web of intrigue. A mental representation of the collection of all of the memory fragments of every person that you and I consumed. Alex said, this allows us to look into the entire life memories of a person in just 10 to 11 seconds, something that you unconsciously do without needing to check into it. However, yours is different. How so? Izuku asked. Alex smiled and looked back on the hologram. James and mine only allows us to look into the person's memory. You on the other hand take it more into a whole new different level. Not only allowing you to look into another person's life, but also allowing you to permanently copy another person's quirk. Quite an interesting feat, if you ask me, he said, making Izuku nod. Additionally, Heller spoke up and touched the hologram. Pinching a random cell, he took it out of the hologram and tossed it towards a shocked Izuku, who clumsily caught it. As you can see, yours can be taken from the web and be either inspected or be crushed if you want the memory to be erased from the face of the earth, all the while keeping the person's quirk, if they ever have one. Just think about the specific memory or the person you consumed and visualize it being crushed and poof, it will be gone forever. Izuku nodded dumbly at the former US Marine before looking down at the cell. He inspected the memory, and when he saw what the memory contained, he immediately crushed it. This action earned surprised and curious glances from the two adults. Was it that bad? Alex asked. You have no idea, Izuku said in an annoyed tone, shaking his hand in a disgusted way. With that reaction, I think we all know what that memory contained. Alex just gave James a look, the latter shrugging as he crossed his arms. That sums all of it. Do you have any questions? The prototype asked Izuku, who looked back at the hologram as it slowly dissipated and back to the two. There's two actually, he said, earning a nod from the two. Okay, first question, he paused and pointed at James. How are you here? Said man just blinked. That's a good question, he said before thinking for a bit before looking back at the young hero. I think it has something to do with the bastard beside me. Since I am pretty sure I didn't get reincarnated into you as well. Though, that could also be a possibility, he said pointing his finger towards Alex. Ah, yes, that's right. I believe that when our souls merged, a fragment of James's soul containing some of the abilities of the Blacklight virus, such as tendrils, pack leader, and some other miscellaneous skills, had also been inserted within your soul. Alex said, and paused for a second before continuing. There's also that time where I secretly consumed some of his blood to look into his memories. Maybe that was the reason. This earned a reaction from Heller. What the fuck? Why the fuck will you look into my memories? Alex merely shrugged. I dunno. I was bored. Why I oughta. His yells were interrupted by Izuku. Anyway, on to my next question, Izuku said, stopping a fight from starting inside his own mindscape. My other question, who were those figures I saw before you two stopped me from approaching them? Alex and James were silent at that question. Izuku could see the uncertainty in their faces and grew anxious. It's okay if you two don't want to answer it, he trailed off, only to be interrupted by Alex. They are the previous users of One for All, he said, opting Izuku's eyes to widen. We don't know how they got here, but we stopped you from approaching them because it would have been too dangerous, even for you to equip All Might's quirk. Wah, how so? Izuku asked, confused about all of this. Blacklight and One for All are two of the most powerful quirks in your world. Combining the two will essentially turn you into a god. But both have drawbacks that will cause a lot of damage in your well-being. Making your already highly destructive quirk even more destructive, he said, as a serious expression can be seen on the man's face. We stopped you for that very reason. If you ever got a chance to get your hand on One for All, chances of your whole body exploding from the inside out is really likely. This caused chills to spread throughout Izuku's spine. Just the mere thought of his body exploding with that drawback almost made Izuku vomit. That's why One for All and Blacklight should never be combined in one body, Alex said, causing Izuku to have a thoughtful look on his face. Izuku's mind was still filled with images of him exploding from the inside out, and it was very unsettling. It was Alex's hand that pushed off those thoughts, and he smiled at him. That being said, you don't need One for All to become the hero that you always wanted to be, you already have Blacklight. And every other quirk he copied, Heller added. And every other quirk you copied, Alex repeated. Izuku chuckled a bit and nodded. I understand, he said as he felt a faint pulling sensation from his head. He panicked a bit, but Alex only laughed at this. Looks like you're waking up. Good luck out there, Izuku. Congrats on ranking 35th. Same here, Heller said as he saluted the boy. The current Blacklight wielder nodded and thanked them. It took him 5 seconds to fully fade away, leaving the two in his mindscape. Making sure that Izuku was fully gone, James looked over at Alex. Why did you lie about Blacklight and One for All? He asked the hooded man, who just looked at him with a raised eyebrow. I don't know what you mean. Don't give me that crap, Mercer. You and I know damn well that that kid wouldn't have any problem wielding both Blacklight and One for All. He narrowed his eyes on the original prototype. So why the hell did you lie to him about that? Alex looked up into the red sky with uncharacteristic melancholy on his face. So that history won't repeat itself, he whispered. I did so many despicable things in the world when I was alive, and I barely felt remorse in all of my actions, thinking it was the right thing to do. The moment you came and put an end to my chaotic reign was the moment where I felt the most human throughout my life as the Blacklight virus. To be feared and to be hated for something that I thought would change the world for the better was something that I wouldn't want Izuku to feel. James stared at the man before him and couldn't help but sigh. He was still mad at him for all of the chaos and destruction he did and all the innocent lives he had killed. He was sure that the man was heartless and had no emotion at all. But looking at the man in front of him right now made him think otherwise. If you say so. Looking at the red sky within Izuku's mind, he was willing to trust the man in his judgment. Anyway, why the fuck did you look into my memories, Mercer? Alex shrugged, not looking back at him. I dunno. I was bored. Answer the damn question, you fuck. Izuku looked up to the front door of the 1A Heights Alliance or Class 1A's dorm room. It had been 2 weeks since they all had moved into the dorms. He moved in the dorms, alongside his mom and Eri, the latter two staying in the UA staff, sleeping quarters as a way to keep Eri safe from any other members of the 8 Bullets looking for her, while Inko helped out on taking care of Eri, who had now been officially named Eri Midoriya, adopted daughter of Izuku Midoriya. As soon as Izuku woke up from his meeting with Alex and James, he found himself being whacked by Recovery Girl with her cane. The school nurse scolded him for being way too reckless and not even holding back in fighting his classmates in an exam. The only thing saving him from getting hurt is his shock absorption evolving into nullification. Talk about a clutch moment. He defended himself by saying it was Nezu's idea. The nurse halted her cane assault on the boy and gave Nezu a glare, which had caused a bead of sweat to form on the fur of the chimera. The chimera then gave him praises for his performance and how he made his classmates think under pressure. Though he was thankful for the praises, he couldn't help but feel guilty and mad at himself for almost fatally harming them due to him not holding back. If it weren't for Midnight squeezing him between her bountiful chests, he wouldn't have snapped out of his self-loathing. That caused a wave of laughter from the UA staff and a grumble from Aizawa. After Recovery Girl checked for more damages, he was given permission to leave to get some rest. Izuku sighed and suppressed a yawn from escaping his mouth, still feeling the after effects of the tranquilizer darts that were shot at him. Shaking the drowsiness off his system, though failing miserably, he took a few steps towards the front door. Despite Midnight's attempt of calming him down, he couldn't help but still feel bad for almost losing control of his actions during the exams. He had almost killed some of his classmates due to some of his attacks. And the worst thing about it was enjoying all of it. Just the thought of himself enjoying the fight or hurting his classmates made him sick. That's why he was so frustrated as he tossed the car with one hand. Sighing, Izuku placed his hand on the doorknob and turned it before pushing it open. Uncertainty and anxiety crept their way in his mind as he entered the dorm. Walking in and looking around the dorm, he felt his anxiety slowly lowered as he observed his classmates. Despite their bandages around their bodies due to what had happened in the final exams, he could see their eyes filled with excitement and happiness as they conversed with each other about their plans in the camp. Some of them saw him and approached him asking questions if he was all right, prompting him to wave them off. He congratulated his classmates for passing and apologized for hurting them too badly, to which they told him it was fine. Smiling, Izuku excused himself to go to his room and maybe even take a nap due to the after effects of the trank darts. They nodded at him and asked if he wanted to join them in their trip to the mall tomorrow morning. He agreed and went to his room. As he reached his room, Izuku plopped down his bed and dropped unconscious. Tomorrow is going to be another busy day. Good thing it was a rest day. Just shopping with his classmates. What could possibly go wrong? Kiyashi Ward Shopping Mall. In the midst of the bustling chatter of people shopping or exploring the Kiyashi Ward Shopping Mall, Izuku found himself running for his life as a group of fangirls chased after him as soon as he and his classmates entered the shopping mall. Damned fangirls and damned Kaminari for sharing their location in Haragram, even tagging him in his Haragram update. He mentally noted that he would break Kaminari's fingers when he gets out of this situation. Separated from his group, Izuku, desperate to escape the sea of growing fangirls, he entered the men's restroom and closed it shut. Leaning on the restroom door, he could hear the fangirls murmuring outside and realized that they weren't going to leave the entrance-exit of the restroom. He was stuck in a really sticky situation right now, and none of his classmates will be able to help, considering that the fangirls might go after them if they interfere with the chase. So much for rest day, Izuku thought to himself, sighing as he could still hear the chattering and squeals from the girls outside and began brainstorming ideas to leave the place unsuspected. He can't go out using a window as an escape route, since the fangirls would most likely surround the area to prevent him from escaping. He could always use his hero status to drive them away, but that would cause a lot of attention. Last thing he wants is attention and stress from all of these fangirls. If only I can use my quirk, he thought to himself and froze. It took him 3 seconds before he facepalmed. He can always use his quirk if it was an emergency, and this is definitely an emergency. Channeling Blacklight all over his body, he used disguise. Outside the men's restroom, as all of the fangirls waited, the door opened. All of the fangirls turned to the door and were ready to lunge at the person who exited the room, only to deadpan when they saw Shota Aizawa exit the door. They immediately ignored him and went back to waiting as the underground hero exited the door with ease. Unbeknownst to the fangirls, Aizawa was grinning like a madman as he walked away from the rabid group. Making sure to keep a great distance from the fangirls, he took a left turn to walk under the escalator and walked to the other side, emerging as Izuku as Blacklight retracted back into him. The shit-eating grin still appeared on the green-haired boy's face as he successfully escaped the rabid fangirls, all the while informing the security that there was a large group of girls loitering outside the men's bathroom. Mission success. Respect plus, he thought as he texted his classmates. Now to break Kaminari's fingers. He thought as he maniacally cackled in his mind, almost sounding like Nezu, as a certain blonde-haired boy began shivering in fear. His mental insanity was interrupted when he accidentally bumped into someone. As they collided, both fell to the ground. Izuku immediately apologized as he began picking up the scattered bags of marshmallows on the tiled floor. As he picked up all of the fallen items before placing them in a paper bag, he looked at the person he bumped into and had to suppress a blush from forming on his face as his eyes met hers. Dark green eyes met cerulean as he was met face to face with a girl with shoulder-length, bob-shaped black hair side swept to her right with a shorter strand hanging above her eyes. The expression on the girl's face was neutral, but he could see flashes of emotion in her piercing cerulean eyes. Slowly standing up, Izuku stepped forward and stretched his arm towards the girl. "Are you okay? Can you stand?" he asked with concern. Not wanting to ruin her cute outfit consisting of a white turtleneck sweater and a chestnut plaid skirt only a few centimeters above her knees, over black stockings and pink doll shoes. The girl only stared at the outstretched hand and nodded before taking the hand and letting Izuku pull her up. Izuku handed her the paper bag and apologized one more time. The girl only nodded at him before walking away from him, earning a concerned look from Izuku, who guiltily watched the girl disappear in the sea of people in the shopping mall. As the girl walked away from the young hero, she was met with the very familiar Itsuka Kendo and the rest of the girls from Class 1B, who were all chatting about how excited they were for the camp. Itsuka noticed the girl's sudden change of demeanor, even though there was barely even a change. Curiosity getting the best of her, Itsuka placed her hand on the other girl's shoulder. "Hey Yui, you okay? You seem kinda flustered," she asked the girl, now introduced as Yui. Yui opened her mouth to speak but closed it immediately as she nodded timidly. Her cheeks and ears began to heat up, causing all of the girls to look at each other in shock and confusion. Walking around, Izuku can be seen carrying shopping bags filled with camping supplies, training weights, snack and candies for Eri, who unfortunately couldn't come to the camp, and some marshmallows and chocolates, as a request from Ochako and Mina as they want to make s'mores there. After escaping the fangirls and his encounter with that beautiful girl, he had met up with his classmates. They then split into pairs and there were only odd numbers of students, since some of them are either busy, don't want to come or are too lazy, meaning one of them can go with a pair or go alone. Being alone for the majority of the beginning of their shopping trip, Izuku volunteered to be the solo shopper, much to the dismay of the girls. He left the group, not without warning Kaminari to stop tagging him in his hairogram updates if he wants to still have 10 fingers by the end of the school year. Now that Izuku got everything on his list, he made his way to the central area and sat down on the bench surrounding a palm tree as he watched the crowd of people walk by, occasionally waving at kids who recognized him. He was minding his own business when another person sat next to him. "You're the kid from the sports festival, right? I'm a big fan," the person next to him said. He was about to greet the man, when he felt 4 fingers grabbed onto his neck. "It's been a while since we last saw each other, Izuku Midoriya," the man said. That voice, he could never forget that voice. The voice that laughed at their suffering back in USJ. The voice that ordered the Nomu to beat the crap out of his teachers. The voice that was responsible for the injuries that not only he but everyone who were in USJ when the attack happened. Only one person met that criteria. And it was someone Izuku was far too eager to meet again, to teach the man a lesson to not mess with Ua. "Tamura Shigaraki," he said with venom in his tone. This earned a sinister chuckle that escaped the man's lips as the grip on Izuku's neck tightened but didn't faze him. "Make one move and all of my fingers will touch your neck. When that happens, you'll start crumbling to dust. From your skin to your throat, to you." He was cut off when Izuku interrupted him. "Do it then. I dare you." 6 words. It only took 6 words to make Shigaraki fumble. He looked at the brat with narrowed eyes, only to see that the young hero was staring right back at him with red piercing eyes. Ignoring the odd sense of deja vu in his chest, Shigaraki changed the topic. "Answer this, Midoriya." The USJ, the Nomus, all brushed to the side. The hero killer does the same thing. But everything he does overshadows me. We do the same thing. But what makes us different? The question caused a bit of confusion on Izuku's part. He would have been sure that Stain worked for the League of Villains, because of the Nomus back in Hosu City. Turns out he was wrong. Izuku slowly opened his mouth while not breaking eye contact. Shigaraki waited for his response, ignoring the itchy feeling in the man's neck. "I plead the 5th, Izuku said, without hesitation. Shigaraki blinked once, twice, thrice. That's when the words registered into the man's mind. His teeth grinded with each other as veins bulged out of his forehead. Big words for a pile of dust. "You do know I could kill you right here, right now? Right?" he said in a growl to the boy as a way to intimidate him, but the boy's gaze never faltered as he continued to stare at him. "I beat All Might's personal record in the entrance exam. I defeated your little pet back in the USJ and forced you to escape. I won the whole sports festival. I trained under Mirko for my internship and was able to capture Stain on my own in my first internship, then became the youngest hero in Japan the day after. Defeated high-ranking villains and gave my entire class a run for their money while my quirk is being suppressed in half," he said without breaking eye contact. "I did all of that in just my freshman year as a hero course student. So what makes you think I'm afraid of a man-child like you?" Then perish. Unable to hold his own temper, Shigaraki lowered his last finger on the boy's throat. Izuku's throat began crumbling as the young hero let out a choked scream. Arms flailing as pain erupted from his throat as his consciousness began to fade. "Well, At least that's what Shigaraki expected. All of his fingers were down but nothing happened. No choked screaming, no throats disintegrating, no arm flailing. Just a green-haired boy glaring. It had confused Shigaraki. His confusion was cut off when he felt a tense feeling coming from the person he is holding right now. Looking over at the boy, his eyes widened to see that the sclera of his eyes were now pitch black with his crimson eye glaring daggers at him. His chest felt like it was exploding due to his heartbeat banging like drums. Is this the feeling of fear? Tamura Shigaraki, I'll give you exactly 5 seconds to let go of me and calmly leave this place before I cut your arm off. Izuku said. 1. Tamura didn't make a move, thinking he was bluffing. 2. Izuku said as his quirk began enveloping his arm, earning Shigaraki's attention. 3. His quirk tightened on his arm and began to take the shape of his blade. 4. Izuku said and slowly raised his arm near the man-child's hand. 5. Izuku didn't get to finish counting when Shigaraki pushed his neck away, forcing Izuku to stumble back. Izuku looked back at the villain and was about to charge him, when a very familiar black mist appeared out of nowhere and began covering the decay user. He watched with narrowed eyes as Shigaraki gritted his teeth. Mark my words, Izuku Midoriya. I will kill you and I will do it slowly and painfully. He said as he was completely covered by the black mist, and just like that, he was nowhere to be seen. For the love of God, Shoto. Quit calling me your brother-in-law. Izuku's voice echoed throughout UA's schoolyard. His face beat red as he sent a glare towards his friend, who wasn't even fazed. Why not? Shoto asked, tilting his head. You saved my mom and sister's life from a villain. You are worthy of continuing the Todoroki bloodline with your own. How does that even make any sense? Izuku yelled indignantly. And besides, I'm not even in a relationship with your sister. Yet, Shoto said, cutting him off. Yet I mean, no. I don't even know her that well and just interacted with her once. And that interaction was just her thanking me for saving her. He said, his face blushing like a storm. Well, that can easily be arranged, brother-in-law. The dual-colored haired boy said with a shrug. Stop calling me that, Izuku yelled, activating erasure in the process. His annoyance reached new heights. Fine, I'll stop calling you brother-in-law, he said, earning an indignant, thank you, from Izuku, but continued talking. I'll call you dad instead. You son of a. That was the moment where Iida chose to jump in between, before Izuku could tear Todoroki to shreds. The taller boy barely held Izuku back as Todoroki continued walking towards the bus waiting for them outside UA's walls. Izuku was still blushing in embarrassment and annoyance as he followed the ice-fire user, while most of the guys in Class 1A, including Katsuki, snorted in amusement while the girls just looked on with varying looks of jealousy, confusion and amusement. Despite his initial annoyance, Izuku couldn't help but worry for some reason. It had been 2 days since the Kiyoshi Ward incident. After his encounter with Tamura Shigaraki and being threatened to be killed, he had felt that this training camp was a bad idea. He wasn't afraid of the villain's threat, he was confident that he could easily beat Shigaraki. But something tells him that the villain is planning something big, being bold enough to go to public and threaten the hero. He could just be paranoid at the same time, he could be right. And he hoped it's just the former. Shaking his paranoia away, he looked up to the direction of the bus. Only for his left eye to twitch when he saw Monoma and the rest of Class 1B. The presence of their sister class wasn't the thing that ticked him off, but it was Monoma's crazed look as he spoke up. Wah, Class 1A needs supplementary lessons. That means someone got a failing mark, Monoma said with a smug look on his face. Before the copycat could talk some more trash, Izuku cut him off. Wouldn't that mean someone in your class also failed? He said bluntly, making the blonde boy sputter. This earned a smirk on Izuku's face. Too easy. And judging by your reaction, it looks like that person was you. Izuku's guess probably was right when the 1B student looked at him with an angry expression. Monoma was about to talk back when he was knocked out by a chop to his neck courtesy of Itsuka. Sorry about Monoma, the orange-haired girl said, to which Izuku just waved off. Anyway, how have you been, Midoriya? I'm doing well, busy with class and patrols as always, but it's manageable, he said to the martial artist. He then caught a glance with the other Class 1B students and even waved at Setsuna and Kanoko, the latter of which blushed profusely, something that made Izuku chuckle inwardly. Though, he blinked for 3 reasons. 1. Because Abara Shiozaki somehow kept her hair, vines short, like how he had cut them in the sports festival. 2. The girl he had bumped into back in Kiyoshi Ward was also a UA student. No wonder she looked familiar. 3. The fact that some of the guys in Class 1B are glaring at him. To be specific, a guy with a mantis mutation, a guy with a bandana, a black-skinned guy with white hair, and a guy with short brown hair and oval-shaped eyes. Izuku ignored them as Class 1B excused themselves when Vlad King arrived and led them to their bus. He waved at them and continued his way towards their designated bus. Looking over at Iida, "Iida, if you may," he asked the taller boy, who nodded and faced the class. "All right everyone, Class 1A's bus is here. Please line up and enter the bus, no pushing," Iida said to the class as he chopped invisible onions. The class followed suit. Izuku waited for all of his classmates to enter as he silently did a head count to make sure no one was left behind. Counting 21, minus himself of course, he began to walk towards the bus. Well, that's until, that's what he heard before a pink blur tackled, or in Class 1A's perspective, speared him to the ground. Groaning at the weight on top of him, he looked down and saw pink. With a sigh he spoke up. "Dagnabbit, May, why do you keep doing that?" he wheezed out, trying his best to ignore the soft mountains pressing on his chest. "Why are you here anyway?" he asked, blushing red. "Oh, I'm here to join Class 1A and B for research purposes. You know, studying your quirks to make new babies," she said. "That our power loader got tired of you blowing everything up and had ordered you to come with us as they repair the support class workplace." Izuku asked rhetorically. May just smiled wider. "I admit nothing. I'll take that as a yes." Izuku sighed and shook his head. Classic May. He thought and looked at her with a deadpan expression. "Can you get off me now? This is getting embarrassing." "Hee. Don't be like that, Izu," she said, looking up to him with a wide smile. "You know you love me." As she said that, she nuzzled closer to his chest, making Izuku shudder at the contact. Not wanting to be chewed on by Iida for May's somewhat affectionate gesture or getting his embarrassment to reach new heights, Izuku raised his hand and lightly chopped her on top of her head. That caused her to stop nuzzling, much to his relief. "Hey, what was that for?" she cried out and pouted. "That's for tackling me like a bull. Now, can you please get off me? We really need to go to the bus before Mr. Aizawa scolds us." May continued pouting but got off of him, albeit reluctantly. Izuku stood up and dusted his pants before looking over at May. That's when he noticed that she had her salmon dreads on a ponytail that actually looked good on her. Giving her a smile, he reached out and took a strand of her loose dreadlocks and placed them behind her ears. Before she knew it, Izuku pulled her in a hug. "I missed you, May," he whispered. The gesture caused her to turn beet red and her heart to flutter. Giggling a bit, she returned the hug. "I missed you too, Izu," she said, not so secretly sniffing his clothes. It took them a solid 18.02 seconds of hugging before they let go and Izuku led her to the bus. Izuku introduced her to the class, oblivious by the jealous pouts from her female classmates as May gave them a victory sign and a wink, adding to their jealousy. Though, Izuku noticed that Iida backed away from May, which was fair remembering what happened back in the sports festival. Probably traumatized by her. They went to their seats and with Aizawa already entering the bus and sitting in front, the bus started moving. The whole bus ride was steady and nothing much happened, besides Izuku threatening Aoyama to cut his legs if he didn't stop standing up during the ride. Aizawa looked back at the class and observed them conversing with each other. Looking away, he slumped back to his seat. Their days of monkeying around like this are numbered, he thought as the bus ride continued. Izuku, sitting at the farthest seat, looked around his classmates. He could see the excited looks in their eyes and how they have been waiting for this moment of calm and relaxation. Even May, who was happily conversing with her seatmate, Melissa, about support items. It made him laugh how different the two girls are. May being loud and eccentric while Melissa is graceful and humble. Leaning back to his seat, He could see from the corner of his eye that Katsuki was texting someone with his phone. He could see the slight twitch on the blonde boy's lips and raised a brow when Bakugo's ears began to redden. A girl perhaps? I'm happy for him. Izuku thought and smiled a bit before looking away. He was really happy with how Bakugo is becoming after the internship. He was calmer and rarely screamed profanities. Though he was still loud, that was normal for a blonde-haired Bakugo. Their interactions were also different from how they were before. Bakugo now calls him by his name and does not insult him anymore, nor attack him. After the exams and Izuku waking up from his nap and after their supper, Katsuki asked him to go outside to talk. That was the time where Katsuki officially apologized to Izuku for all that he had done and said to him. Izuku was even taken aback when the blonde boy had offered his quirk to be copied as a way to prove that he is really sorry. Despite the apology appearing genuine, Izuku had told the blonde boy that he can't really forgive him for a decade's worth of torment and pain that he had felt on Katsuki's hand. He told him that it'll take time for him to forgive him, something that the blonde boy understood. Izuku initially declined Explosion to be copied, but Katsuki insisted on sharing his quirk as an olive branch to mend their relationship. Though reluctant, Izuku accepted the quirk and took a small prick on the blonde's palm as they shook hands while Blacklight copied Explosion. With Explosion now in his arsenal, Izuku can use it to gain speed when using Glide, and also combining it with Pop-Off allowed him to create balls that would stick on their target before exploding. He also gave tips for Katsuki with his quirk, like a concentrated blast that can pierce through armor or hard surfaces. They also began hanging out and even playing games with Kirishima and the rest of the boys. Though they still see each other as rivals, he is happy that their relationship is now being fixed. That's until a sudden feeling of foreboding entered his mind as he looked straight to his homeroom teacher. Why does it feel like something bad is about to happen? He thought and looked worriedly at Mei. His train of thought was interrupted when the bus suddenly stopped. With that, the class began to exit the bus, following Aizawa. Izuku was the last out of the bus and immediately noticed that they weren't in a bus stop, but rather, they stopped near the mountainside, by a cliff. Wait, this isn't a bus stop. Where's Class 1B? Those were his classmates' thoughts and worries as Izuku walked an inch closer to Mei. He was sure that something was off about this stop. Eyeing his homeroom teacher with suspicion, he was about to say something when Aizawa beat him to it. To say there's no ulterior motive would be a lie, the hero said in his usual tone of voice, making Izuku look at him with narrowed eyes. What does he mean by that? Eraser. It's been a while, a familiar voice called out from the side, making Izuku look. As he did, his eyes widened. No way. Your feline fantasies are here, perfectly cute and cat-like heroes. We're the wild pussycats. With that, the Mandalay and Pixie Bob, 2 of 4 members of the hero team, the wild pussycats, struck a pose, while a boy of Aries' age, if not younger, wearing a red cap with yellow horns, stood by them. A frown on his face as he looked at the class. I'd like to introduce the pro heroes, the wild pussycat. They're one of the 4 hero teams that founded the Union Affair Office, Aizawa said, in his usual tired voice. They specialize in mountain rescue operations, and are veterans in their field. They've got 12 years of experience in that field. I'm 18 at heart, Pixie Bob interjected. They will be the ones who would be helping you all in training your quirks to improve them, Aizawa said, completely unfazed by Pixie Bob's interjection. The class and Mei were in awe at the sight of the wild pussycats. They all have varying expressions at the sight of the heroines. The girls were a bit insecure at the 2 women's attractively fit bodies, while some of the boys looked away with blushes in their faces at the sexy sight. That includes Izuku, who was looking anywhere but the heroines, especially Mandalay. Let it be known that Mandalay was Izuku's childhood crush. Though, Izuku was a bit confused when he heard Pixie Bob's voice. He would have sworn he heard her voice before, he just couldn't remember where. Yup. This entire area is more or less our domain, Mandalay said, looking over at the forest and mountains from the railing of the cliff. The place you'll be staying at is on the base of that mountain, she trailed off. This made Izuku feel suspicious. Looking at the base of the mountain, his eyes narrowed. Something's not right here, he thought as he silently began channeling his quirk. Then why did we stop if we're only halfway there? Ochako asked. Confusion can be heard from her voice. Don't tell me. Sato started. realization entering his eyes as a bead of sweat began to trail down his forehead. The rest of the class began taking steps backward. "Let's hurry back to the bus, please," Honta said nervously, as he began turning towards the direction of the bus. "It's 9:30 a.m. right now," Mandalay started, causing some of them to flinch in her somewhat eerily sweet voice as her tail began to wag from side to side. "If you kick it up a notch, you'll all be there by 12. Seeing the threat, they paled as they all began to run back to the bus, yelling at each other to go back in a hurry. "The kittens that don't make it before 12:30 won't be eating," the red-haired heroine said. Though, she was confused when she saw all of them run away except for one. "I'm sorry everyone," Aizawa said, looking over at the retreating students, who were halted by Pixie Bob landing in front of them. "But your school trip has already started." As he does so, Pixie Bob activates her quirk. Well, at least that's what the trio of heroes expected. "Huh? My quirk?" the blonde heroine cried out in confusion. The rest also looked at her with the same confused look, until Class 1A and Aizawa realized what had happened. Aizawa was confused how Izuku could have used erasure without even looking over at Pixie Bob. He activated his quirk on Izuku to release the erasure on Pixie Bob, but he too couldn't feel his quirk. This just increased his confusion. "Let's all calm down for a second," Izuku said, causing everyone to look over at his direction. He began to turn towards the crowd and showed them his glowing crimson eyes, black scleras and floating hair. Just from the visuals, it would be obvious that Izuku combined erasure with sonar senses, making the effectiveness of the quirk grow tenfold. "As much as I would love to go down there and Dester beat up whatever it is down there to go to the base, but there is a small detail that you three kinda forgot to realize," he said to the heroes as he pointed at Mei. "Not everyone on this trip is a hero course student." The two heroines looked over at Hatsume with wide eyes and turned towards Aizawa, who just looked at Izuku with a serious expression. But before he could talk, Izuku cut him off. "I'm not complaining nor thinking that she is going to be a liability. She is more than capable of keeping herself safe with her awesome inventions. But what if it wasn't her but another support hero or heck a general education student?" He smiled at Mei, who gave him a grin, though a blush could be seen dusting her cheeks. "I'm disappointed that for someone who likes to think logically, you are being quite illogical, Eraser," Izuku said, using his pro-hero card to lecture his teacher. Everyone was shocked by the sight of Izuku crossing his arms and lecturing Aizawa. They were conflicted whether to laugh or be concerned. Sighing, Aizawa silently chuckled. "Who would have thought that I'd be lectured by one of my students for being illogical? By the problem child of all people? I think I'm getting soft." "Right, sorry," the underground hero said, causing the rest to widen their eyes. Eraserhead just apologized for his mistake. "That's new. I just want you all to be alert in your surroundings and prepare your minds for a future villain confrontation." "I see, I understand. Sorry for ruining your plan," Izuku said, bowing but not deactivating his quirk. "Next time, when you plan things like this, inform me. I could always help out in increasing the difficulty," he said with a smirk as he glanced at Todoroki. That caused the class to shiver in fear, flashbacks of the final exams returning into their minds. It's obvious that he was still annoyed at Todoroki for calling Izuku his brother-in-law, or dad, earlier this morning. "So, are we canceling the plan, Eraser?" Mandalay asked. "No need to cancel it. We'd be happy to continue with it," Izuku said, smiling and ignoring the shocked expressions of his classmates. "And besides, I'm pretty sure Mei wouldn't want to hang out with older people. I'm 18 at heart. Plus, she can observe us up close to get ideas for her babies." That caused a grin to appear in the support student's face. With that being said, Izuku released the quirk and scooped Mei, who was surprised and startled by the sudden action, into a bride's carry as dragon wings sprouted from his back as he jumped down the railing to the forest below. As Izuku did that, Pixie Bob used her quirk and made the ground move, causing the rest of the class to be pushed or flung off the cliff. "Feel free to use your quirks in our domain as you see fit," Mandalay called out from the railing of the cliff. "You have 3 hours. Use your own feet to get to the facility, through this forest of magic beast." The class dug themselves out of the dirt and dusted themselves. They began grumbling on how UA was notorious on these types of simulations. That's until an earth beast suddenly appeared out of the foliage, causing them to panic. Kota tried to use his quirk on it, only to find out that it was useless. Before they could make a move, black and red spikes erupted from the ground and impaled the dirt creature, making it crumble to bits. That didn't go unnoticed by Pixie Bob, who felt one of her beasts got destroyed. The class looked over at the direction where the spikes came from and saw Izuku, wielding his claws and stabbing the ground. Removing his claws off the ground, he looked at the crumbled dirt beast on the ground. So that's Pixie Bob's quirk. Interesting, he thought as he looked over at his class. What are you guys waiting for? Let's crush these so-called beasts and get some lunch. He smirked when he saw their shock turn to determination. Even May was pumped up. He walked towards his classmate and placed his hand in the center. The class followed suit. Plus Ultra in 3. 1, 2, 3. Plus Ultra. 12:35 p.m. Well, guys are an interesting bunch. Mandalay greeted the disheveled students. I'm surprised that you guys got through the forest quite easily. When I told you that you can reach the base by 12, I mean by our standards. All of the students' eyes twitched. How obnoxious, they thought simultaneously. It wasn't really surprising. Aizawa whispered, looking over at Izuku. A smile hidden in his scarf. I thought you'd take longer. Pixie Bob chuckled. To have figured out my awakened earth beasts so quickly and easily. You guys are good. Especially, her expression turned sultry and pointed at Izuku. You. Me? Izuku blinked and pointed to himself. Your lack of hesitation and indecisiveness. I take it that comes from your experiences you have acquired after being a pro? She began to walk towards Izuku as she licked her lips. Her expression then turned a bit dramatic as she rushed Izuku with her arms flailing. I call dibs on this kitten. I'll groom him myself, she said as she began spitting on Izuku. The class were speechless at the sight of the woman spitting. Mandalay. Is she always like this? Aizawa asked. It's gotten a lot worse lately ever since the sports festival. She's at the age to take a mate. The red-haired woman said. I mean, who wouldn't? That boy is built like a Greek god. Even IWOU. She cut herself off and shook her head. Hearing what Mandalay had said, Izuku, who was desperately trying his best to cover his face, remembered where he heard her voice. If he wasn't mistaken, Pixie Bob was the woman who yelled, "Marry me," back in the sports festival. That's when a thought came in his mind, speaking of mates. Don't speak, Pixie Bob said as she placed her paw glove over Izuku's face. Izuku continued talking. I've been wondering for a while. Whose child is that? He said as he pointed over at the boy wearing the red cap with yellow horns. As he pointed, he failed to notice the black and red tendrils of Blacklight swirling as it soaked Pixie Bob's saliva. Mandalay looked behind her and saw who Izuku was pointing at. Oh, no, that's my nephew. Kota, come and say hi, you're going to be living with them for the next week. She waved the boy, now known as Kota, to come closer. But the boy didn't move or make any attempt to do so and continued to stare at the hero students with a frown on his face. Being able to escape Pixie Bob's grasp, Izuku walked towards Kota. Smiling, he lowered himself a bit and reached out his hand to the boy. Hey. My name's Izuku Midoriya, I'm studying hero studies at UA High. Nice to meet you. The rest of his words were cut off when the boy punched him in the family jewels. The rest of the boys, even Aizawa, flinched and unconsciously touched their own family jewels. The girls were baffled at what had just transpired. Iida was about to confront the boy for punching Izuku in the nuts, when he noticed that Izuku didn't even look hurt. Blinking in surprise, he looked over at Izuku and asked, Midoriya? Are you okay? Izuku just blinked and turned to Iida. Yeah. Despite Izuku's reassurance, Iida confronted the boy. You, the nephew, get back here and apologize to Midoriya. I'm not going to fuck around with a bunch of losers who want to grow up to be corny-ass heroes. Kota said, not even looking back and ignoring Mandalay's calls. Fuck around. How old are you? The spectacled teen called out. Katsuki snorted in amusement. Kids got spunk, he said with an amused smirk. Reminds you of yourself? Shoto and Shinso said simultaneously. The fuck did you two emos say? He yelled out to the two. Relax. It was a joke, Todoroki said. Or was it? Shinso smirked. Guys. It's all right. I'm fine. Izuku reassured Iida and the rest of his classmates. How are you still standing? Ochako said, walking towards him. They were confused when Izuku suddenly laughed. You guys always forget that I have shock nullification, he said, causing a wave of understanding nods coming from his classmates. Shock nullification? Eraser. I thought his quirk was Blacklight? Mandalay asked. It's complicated, he just said, which didn't really answer her question but just shrugged. Anyway, enough chit-chat. Go and get your luggage on the bus. Once you've settled into your rooms, grab dinner in the dining hall. After that, take a bath, kick back and unwind. The real deal starts tomorrow. Roll out, he said before walking into the base. The students, after saying, yes sir, they turned away and began walking to the bus. They were still worried about Izuku, but he insisted that he was fine and went to the bus to fetch their stuff. As they did that, Izuku couldn't help but look back to the base. He was something in Kota that he knew very well. Pain. The boy was in so much pain. He doesn't know what caused that pain, but he knows that it was there. And being a hero, he couldn't help but feel the urge to help the boy endure and move on from what's causing him that pain. His train of thought was cut off when a wave of unfamiliar memories entered his mind. You have got to be kidding me? Izuku leaned back into the stone wall interior of the hot spring onsen and let out a sigh of relief as his muscles felt the relaxing sensation of the warm water. It was 5:30 in the afternoon and Class 1A decided to take a soak in the onsen to relax their bodies before going to bed. The hot springs are separated by gender, in order to keep the boys and girls separated, much to the not-so-secret disappointment of most of the girls, mainly Mina, Toru, Tsuyu, Himiko, and Mei. Looking around, Izuku can see his classmates having the same relaxed reactions while some Kaminari, Shiro, and Kirishima are splashing water onto Katsuki, who was yelling profanities at the trio. Iida stood up, attempting to calm down the explosion user to no avail as the rest just snickered at them. Izuku looked at them with a smile, remembering their smiles earlier this afternoon after lunch. Since they arrived at the place earlier than the heroes expected, they were given the chance to spend some leisure time, in which they used well to their enjoyment. Though he made sure to keep erasure up, he heard his classmates joking around how it would only take one sneeze before Kaminari fries everyone in the water. Izuku knew it was a joke, but it bothered him. That's why he was using erasure. Better safe than fried. Some of them used that time to enjoy stuff like playing outdoor games, studying the area, sightseeing, and some of them even just enjoyed napping under the foliage of the thick trees. Despite them being hero trainees, they are still teenagers. They deserve some time off even if it is just hours. He too made himself comfortable by sleeping under the trees and felt the cool afternoon breeze pass by him. Though, he was confused and shocked to wake up with Kyoka sleeping beside him, her head leaning onto his shoulder. He inwardly chuckled remembering the girl trying to explain herself while her face was beet red. However, despite all of this relaxation plus them training tomorrow, something inside him still feels like something big is about to happen. Izuku wasn't sure why, but he could picture a large event happening in the next couple of days. He just wasn't sure what that event was. Sighing to himself, he placed his arms behind his head as he looked up. Doing so made him blink as he could see someone on top of the wall separating the bathhouses. Through the mist that the hot springs are producing, he could see a tiny figure perched on top. He narrowed his eyes to decipher who the person was. That is when he noticed a silhouette of a cap with horns and he recognized who it was. Caught. He was about to call out for the boy, when Iida beat him to it. You. What are you doing up there? It's dangerous, you might fall, the blue-haired boy said, walking out of the hot water of the hot springs. Izuku saw the young boy scowling at them. I'm here to make sure you idiots don't do something stupid, the boy yelled back, glaring daggers at the engine user. Ah, that's so thoughtful of you, Kota. You rock, Kota. Izuku heard Toru and Mina from the other side of the wall and made the boy turn. Before they knew it, the boy was falling down the wall. Iida was about to jump towards the falling boy, when a blur of red, black, and green snatched the boy out of the air, preventing an accident from happening. The boys blinked owlishly at what just happened. They looked at the person carrying the boy in his hands and saw Izuku, black light swirling on his lower body as black shorts appeared, covering him. Izuku excused himself from the group and carried Kota out of the onsen. He was going to bring him to Mandalay and tell her what had happened. They were thinking of two things. 1. How did he reach the boy without the water getting disturbed? 2. How the hell does he got a bigger pee? Looks like he just passed out from a fear of falling. Thanks, Mandalay said to Izuku, wearing nothing but the shorts he summoned. The heroine did her best to not look, failing miserably, onto the boy's exposed body as flashbacks of the sports festival bombarded her mind. Calm down, Shino. He may be a pro but he's still a kid, she reminded herself as she shook her head. Thankfully, Izuku didn't notice her stealing glances at him as he continued to look at Kota's sleeping form. The moment he saw the boy, despite Kota showing a rude expression, Izuku could see the pain in his eyes. It was something that ticked off the hero side of him. Kota. He started, making the heroine look in his direction. He doesn't seem too keen on the concepts of heroes. I grew up around a lot of people who wanted to become heroes, me included, he said, eyes still glued on the unconscious boy. A kid this young being so jaded. It's something I've never really seen before. Yeah. She started. It shouldn't come as a surprise, but there are many out there who aren't fans of heroes. I know a few. Izuku thought, as an image of Shigaraki entered his mind. If he had a normal upbringing he would have grown to idolize heroes as well. That caught Izuku's attention. Normal? He asked. Izuku saw the red-haired heroine sigh as she squeezed the towel and placed it over the unconscious boy's forehead. She looked deep in thought, contemplating if she should tell him. Good thing she didn't need to decide as Pixie Bob entered the room. Mandalay's cousins. Kota's parents, the blonde woman started in an uncharacteristically serious tone. They used to be heroes, but they lost their lives on the job. Izuku stared at the moon as he remembered what the two heroines said to him. Kota's parents, the waterhose heroes, died in their job. They died at the hands of a ruthless villain. When he was young, Izuku remembered seeing the duo on television. They had made a name for themselves as rescue heroes, prioritizing rescue over fighting villains. Izuku often saw them putting out all fire-related problems throughout Japan. He even saw them in their neighborhood once, when there was a fire caused by a fleeing villain with a fire quirk. The duo were able to stop the fire from spreading in the neighborhood Mustafu. Despite being rescue heroes, they also have strong water-based quirks that they used to fight villains back when they were alive. According to Mandalay, they had excellent mastery over their quirks that they injured the villain that killed them so hard that said villain was forced to retreat to hiding. They were praised for their sacrifice and heroism, but at what cost? Because of it, Kota grew bitter and hated anything that revolved around heroes, besides the WWPC. Izuku understands this. Losing one parent is hard to accept, Izuku knows this, even if he never met his father. The emptiness of missing a part of a family reflected on how Izuku grew up before he got his quirk. But to feel the pain of losing both his parents at such a young age. No child deserves to feel that pain. To push those around you and hate the ones that dreamed of becoming a hero. Izuku wished he could help the boy out on getting out of this sadness and pain. Like how he saved Todoroki from Endeavor's shackles. Like how he saved Iida from committing a crime. Like how he, unintentionally, saved Bakugo from his arrogant self. Like how he saved Eri and Himiko from overhaul. But most importantly, like how Alex had saved him from losing his dream. He wanted to save Kota too, but how? The moon is beautiful, isn't it? A voice came from behind him, breaking him out of his thoughts. Looking behind him, he met eyes with the person who had just called him. Hey, why are you still up? Izuku asked as the person made their way close to him. The person just raised the glass of water they were holding as the person continued walking towards him. I got thirsty. I was walking back when I noticed you from the window. Izuku looked over at the base's window where the person pointed. How about you? Why are you still awake and out here? Izuku shrugged and looked up at the moon. I couldn't sleep. He said blankly. He wasn't entirely lying. He couldn't sleep due to his metabolism getting enhanced by his quirk, making it hard for him to sleep at night. Add in the worry, paranoia building in his stomach about this camp and Kota's dilemma. Are you okay? He could feel the worry coming from the person's stare. Looking back at them, his eyes softened at the emotion seen in their eyes. Izuku gave them a small reassuring smile and nodded, taking their left hand, causing a small yelp from the person. Yeah, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. As he said that, he gave the hand a small squeeze. Okay then. But if you need someone to talk to, we're always here for you. He could still see the uncertainty in their eyes before it turned into understanding. He nodded again, smiling. Of course, thank you, he said. As soon as he said that, the person looked at him for a few seconds before walking closer to him and raising a hand on his shirt's collar. He was confused at this action, and was about to ask. That is when he was pulled down as something soft had impacted on his lips. He was surprised by the gesture but didn't pull away as he let the kiss happen. As fast as it happened, it was the same as they pulled away. A quick simple kiss, but Izuku could feel the passion and emotions through it alone. Izuku, with red staining his freckled cheeks, stared at the person in front of him. No, thank you for saving me, the person said, cheeks changing into a rosy hue as the person ran away back to the base, leaving Izuku to stare at them as their hair reflected the moon's light. Yup, definitely not sleeping tonight, he thought as he lowered his head. He was about to go inside, when he felt something weird, as if someone was looking at him. Using his sonar senses, he looked around and saw something suspicious deep in the forest. What the heck is that? He thought as he approached it. Second day of the school trip. 5:45 a.m. With Class 1B. Improve our quirks, Kendo asked, walking out of the base, stretching her arms as she did so. She reached to catch Kanoko, who almost fell down due to her drowsiness. They arrived late last night and it was made obvious by their still sleepy expressions. Vlad King, 1B's homeroom teacher, nodded at his class. Class 1A's already started, let's get going, he said, pumping his fists. They got to stand out in the sports festival, it's our turn now. Got it, it's our time to shine, the hero said loudly, causing some of his students to sweat drop while some were touched. Our humblest apologies, sir. Sorry we're worthless students, some of Class 1B thought, as Tetsu wiped a manly tear that escaped his left eye. You talk about improving our quirks, we've got 20 unique abilities divided amongst us. What do we improve on and how? Tokage asked, still sleepy. Could you be more specific? Togaru Kamakiri, a boy with a mantis-like appearance, said, crossing his arms. His eyes appeared annoyed and impatient. Muscle fibers break under constant abuse and become stronger and thicker. Vlad King turned around and waved his class to follow him. Your quirks are the same, keep using them and they will become stronger. If you don't, they wither away. In other words, there is but one thing to do, he said as he stopped in front of a clearing. Go beyond your limits. Class 1B followed suit. Stopping next to their homeroom teacher, what greeted them almost made their eyes bulge out. In front of them, Class 1A doing different types of exercises to improve their quirks. These exercises are as follows. Katsuki dipping his hands on boiling water before lifting them up into the air and releasing a large explosion. Shoto sits inside another barrel that is over a fire, occasionally using his fire and ice respectively. Ochako is in a floating Zorb ball, face looking like she was about to throw up. Momo and Rikido are consuming a lot of food, while they use their quirk. On the side, Mashirao can be seen slapping his tail on Eijiru's hardened face. Close to them is Melissa and Himiko doing a sparring session, the former has yellow lightning surrounding her, while the latter is randomly changing her face into some of their classmates. Melissa sends punches and kicks towards the other blonde girl, while Himiko dodges every attack using her natural flexibility. On the side of the mountain, Suyu can be seen crawling up said mountain with her tongue outstretched. Denki is holding two wires connected to a generator, letting the electric charge of the generator flow right through him. Honta, with his elbows pointed upward, released a very long strand of tape from his elbow. Same goes for Yuga, who was releasing a laser out of his belt, face pale and in pain. The beam of laser hitting Toru, well in this case a spot where Toru is standing, using her quirk to redirect the beam of laser to a different side. On the same mountain cliff, Hitoshi and Koji are screaming their hearts out. Below that mountain is a cave where Fumikage stayed, calling out Dark Shadow. With him was Mezu, wearing a blindfold and earplugs as he summoned extra eyes and ear from his dupli arm. Outside that cave, Kyoka can be seen using her earphone jacks to stab onto the stone while Mina, who was a few feet away from her, uses her acid to melt the stone. As they all were doing this, Tenya circled around them with his quirk activated, at a speed that was almost as fast as All Might. Class 1B looked on at their sister class and some of them began sweating at how intense the training Class 1A is doing. Normally, we adjust the training based on physical growth, Vlad King said as he looked around. Quote, but we don't have time to laze around Class 1B, Aizawa interjected, walking towards them. Itsuka used that time to talk. With us included, we've got 42 people, she started and looked around at the other class. Can 6 people really handle that many quirks at once? She asked the teachers. Her classmates nodded in agreement. Aizawa nodded. That's why they're here, he said looking to the side. That's right. 4 minds, 1 body. They looked towards the direction of the voice. Your feline fantasies are here. Allow us to lend a helping paw. Perfectly cute and cat-like heroes. We're the wild pussycats. Class 1B stared at the 3 heroines as they struck a pose. With my quirk search, I can observe and monitor up to 100 people at a time. Ragdoll, a woman with emerald green hair, wearing a yellow costume said from her spot. Their location, and weak points too. My earth flow will create a training ground fit for every last one of you. Pixie Bob said as she made a boulder from the mountain and let it roll off. And with my telepath, I can advise and instruct multiple people at once. Mandalay said, smiling at the students. After they said that, Vlad King spoke up. Only you 3, where's Tiger? He asked the trio. Mandalay chuckled sheepishly. Yeah, about that. As she was about to continue, Monoma looked around with a bored look and stopped when he saw Izuku just sitting under a tree with his eyes closed and hands behind his head. The blonde boy scoffed. You tell us to not laze around, but he's not doing anything, he said loudly, pointing at Izuku. Everyone beside Class 1A looked at Izuku's direction. Some of the class agreed with Monoma's statement while some were just confused as to why he isn't doing anything. Before they could continue talking, Izuku spoke up. 5 steps backward. The class and Vlad King blinked. Before they could ask why, they noticed Aizawa and the WWPC took 5 steps backward. They, minus Monoma, who was still berating Izuku for slacking off and began belittling him, followed suit. As they did that, Iida sped past them, leaving a cloud of dust which had enveloped Monoma. The blonde boy began coughing and sneezing. The heroines just chuckled at the boy, making the rest of the class laugh. Monoma just continued glaring at Izuku, who opened his eyes and looked at the new arrival. Class 1B were shocked to see his eyes appeared to be crimson irises with black scleras. Oh hey guys, how have you guys been? He said as he stood up from his spot and began doing some stretches. Before they could respond, Izuku looked over at the heroes. You guys may need to check on Aoyama, he just collapsed. Ragdoll widened her eyes before using her quirk. Seeing that Izuku was right, she excused herself and ran towards Aoyama's spot. As for Tiger, he's resting right now, Izuku said. Mandalay nodded. Right, as I was saying before I was rudely interrupted, she said glaring at Monoma. Tiger is resting at the base. During his session with Midoriya, they got too excited and went all out. And let's just say Midoriya here can pack a punch, she teased Izuku, who just raised his hand. I would like to point out that it wasn't my idea to go all out, he defended himself. Plus, I only hit him with 1/10 of my strength. He whispered the last part but Class 1B heard it loud and clear. He was able to knock out Tiger with just 1/10 of his strength. They thought as they began sweating. Kamakiri gritted his teeth and stomped his way over Izuku. Fight me, he said to the Blacklight user. Izuku looked at him for a second before responding. How about no, he said, walking away from them. What, are you scared? A boy with a bandana mocked him. The president of Class 1A just stared at them with a deadpan expression. I faced down the USJ Nomu, Shigaraki, Stain, and a lot of villains. They are a lot more intimidating than Hopper over there, he said before turning around. He glanced at the heroes and saw Vlad King and Aizawa, nod and shrug, respectively. Though, if you really want a fight, then I'll humor you, he said, summoning Blacklight around his hands, but not much to make weapons. Come at me with everything you got, he said as some of the guys charged him. Dash 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 dash. Fast forward. 4:30 p.m. Izuku carried a plate with rice and curry as he walked up a mountain path leading up. This was the way he saw Kota go and tracked him using his sonar senses. After their training session, Class 1A and Class 1B took quick showers before going out for dinner. Arriving outside, Pixie Bob and Ragdoll inform them that they'll be cooking curry, much to the disappointment of both classes. Both classes formed their own groups and helped out each other cook their respective curries. Izuku watched as his class helped each other with cooking the curry. Though, when he looked over at their sister class, he was confused to see that they were having a hard time making fire for their pots. Not wanting for them to have a hard time, he approached them and ignored the glares sent towards him by the guys that he beat earlier this morning. He walked over their pots and using half hot half cold, he helped them make fire for their pots. Itsuka and the other girls thanked him for his help, while the boys that didn't fight him gave him nods. He still ignored the glares sent to him by the other guys as he went back to his class to help out with cooking. It was until they were starting to eat and he took a few bites when he noticed Kota walking away from the base. Not wanting the boy to starve, he finished his plate and took a different plate and filled it with food. It took him a few minutes to reach Kota's direction. The boy was sitting on the ground and staring at the forest, his red cap shadowing his eyes from the moonlight. "Nice place you got here, kid," Izuku said, looking at the forest below. The boy was surprised to see him there but hid it well in the glare he sent Izuku. "A place where you can see the entirety of the forest and feel the cool night breeze." "How did you know I was here?" the boy yelled at him. Oh, sorry, I saw you walk this way and followed your footprints. I brought some curry, figured you hadn't had anything to eat," he was cut off when Kota interjected. "I'm fine, I don't need any." "What part of, I don't want to fuck around you losers, did you not understand? This is my secret base, you're not welcome here," the boy said, still glaring at him. "Secret base, huh," Izuku said, inwardly amused at the boy's foul mouth. The boy continued talking about how pathetic they were for bragging about their quirks. He was tempted to tell the boy off about them training their quirks to become heroes, but he stopped himself from talking as he remembered his talk with Mandalay and Pixie Bob last night. This is probably the first time he is releasing his anger. Might as well let him be. Izuku just kept his mouth shut as he let the boy vent out all his anger. "Screw you, you've all got a couple of screws loose," the boy continued. "Calling yourselves heroes and villains, killing each other like idiots." That made Izuku look towards the boy. Not just quirks and heroes, the hero society itself, he thought. Bragging about your quirk, that's why you end up like that, fucking idiots. Izuku decided that it was enough. "So you hate quirks, heroes and villains," he said in a low tone. The boy glared harder at him. "So what if I do? So you hate Mandalay then? She's a hero after all." That caught the boy off guard. "Wah no, you hate Pixie Bob, Ragdoll, and Tiger as well. They are all heroes too." And you hate your parents. The water hose." That made the boy widen his eyes. "How did you?" Kota was cut off when Izuku walked forward and placed the plate on a flat stone. He then looked up to the moon. "I know you're in pain, Kota. And I understand that you hate the hero society. Just that, don't let that pain push away those who genuinely care for your well-being." Izuku turned around to leave. "Don't let that hate consume you, because trust me, nothing good will happen if your heart is filled with hatred. Trust me, I know," he said as he left the boy to his own thoughts. "I know very well," he thought as he remembered how he, as Alex Mercer, became a monster that almost destroyed humanity. In a different part of the mountain ledge towering over the forest, a group of figures stood there observing the forest and listening into the distant chattering of students. "It throbs, pulses. Let's hurry up and go," a gruff voice said, clearly impatient. "It's not time yet. Also, didn't I tell you we don't have to overdo it?" a youthful voice said under a gas mask. "Yeah, quit tryna act like the boss," another voice said. "We're only here to send a warning flare this time. These heroes, riddled with holes, will fall to the earth," a man with black hair and severe burn marks and stitches on his face and arms said, staring at the distant light of the base. All for the sake of a brighter future. Chaos ensues within the forest as Izuku sped past the trees, his body actively secreting pressurized blood that increased his overall speed. Blue fire and pink smoke spreading across the trees as distant sounds of screams and fighting can be heard echoing throughout the camp. How did this come to this? It was all peaceful, but how could the scale shift this quickly? Izuku shook off those thoughts as he quickened his pace. His destination was Kota's secret base to make sure that the boy was safe. The boy was nowhere to be seen as soon as both classes finished their dinner. Plus he was the only one who knew about the boy's secret base. Maybe Ragdoll as well, but she had gone missing as soon as the fire started. So it's up to him to ensure that Kota returns safely. As he neared the base, Izuku could hear Kota's panicked breaths due to his enhanced hearing. It's a good thing that the boy was where he thought she would be, but it worried him as he heard a different voice with the little boy. A gruff voice that sounded manic. Using all his strength on his legs, he tackled Kota to the ground. It's a good thing he did. If he was even a second late, the boy would have been crushed by a large fist that created a crater upon impact. The figure was shocked at the green-haired boy's sudden appearance, but that immediately changed to a smirk when he recognized who had stepped in. Well, if it isn't Blackwatch. It looks like it's my lucky day. I get to kill a hero, the man said menacingly. The green-haired boy immediately recognized the person standing in front of him. Goto Masuji, also known as Muscular. A villain responsible for countless deaths, including the water hose duo and unfortunately, his own father. He remembered his mother's eyes when the news of the water hose's death were broadcasted and then showed the face of the killer. He saw her face morph into anger when she saw the man's face and whispered, "Murderer," as she looked over at his father's picture frame. He put two and two together, and concluded that the man responsible for the water hose's death is also his father's murderer. Another reason he wanted to become a hero was to bring the man to justice, but looking at the man's sadistic face right now and the lack of remorse in his eyes, the young hero concluded that justice was not an option. Izuku ignored the man's sadistic expression and glanced towards Kota, who was visibly shaking in fear and was tearing up. "It's gonna be all right, Kota," he said to the boy, looking back at the villain in front of him. "I'm going to save you, no matter what." This caused a scoff from Muscular. "No matter what, you'll save him. That's cute," the man said, mockingly as he clutched the cloak he was wearing. "Excellent. As expected, the true essence of a hero. Ready to jump in at a time of need. Anytime, anywhere." The man smirked. "Izuku Midoriya, aka Blackwatch. I had just been ordered to start off by killing your sorry ass." Izuku gritted his teeth as he began summoning his quirk around his hands, at the same time the man did as well, as muscle tissues escaped the man's skin and surrounded his arm. Muscular then threw off his cloak and crouched down. "Right after I take my precious time torturing you, that is. Let me see you bleed." The villain launched towards the two with speed almost rivaling All Might. Barely blocking the punch sent towards him, Izuku was sent to the mountainside. Landing in a crater, if it weren't for his quirk healing and absorbing the impact of the punch, he would have been in pain right now. Ah, whoops. Gritting his teeth, he looked up at the man. Muscular had his fist clenched with muscle fibers of his quirk surrounding his arms. "I almost forgot. If you know, then tell me." The man looked over at Izuku with a sadistic grin on his face. "By any chance, do you know where the Bakugo kid is? After all, first and foremost, I've got a job." "Katsuki," he thought as the man sent a large punch towards him. "To finish. You can say, I don't kn. His words were cut off when he felt his momentum recoiling back at him, pushing him off a good distance. If it weren't for his situational awareness, Muscular would have fallen down the cliff. Looking over at the young hero, he saw a spiked shield on the boy's arms as Izuku jumped out of the crater. Muscular scoffed in amusement. He grinned at the boy and was about to attack him again when he felt a rock hit him in the head. He turned to the direction where the rock came from and saw Kota's eyes filled with fear and tears. "Water hose, my mom and dad. Did you torment them like that before you killed them too?" the boy asked shakingly. Muscular stared at the boy for a few seconds before his face turned to recognition. "What's this? Seriously, you're those heroes' kid. This must be fate." The man laughed. "Water hose, those were the two that gave me this artificial left eye." He was about to continue talking when Kota cut him off. It's all your fault. It's because of people like you that things always turn out like this. The boy yelled at him. The man could only look at him with a scoff. Little snot-nosed brats like you are always looking to pass the blame. That's no good. I'm not even holding a grudge about my lost eye. I just simply wanted to kill, the man smirked. And those two just happened to be dumb enough to try and stop me. The ones at fault are those who try to act even if they are incapable of doing anything effective, he said as his muscle fibers began to expand. That pretty much sums up you pathetic mom and dad. The man yelled as he saw a glimpse of a blur from behind him. That's how it goes, he smirked. Turning to the side, he saw Izuku with his muscle mass on. Isn't that right, Blackwatch? The fault is yours, he said as the boy's hand was trapped between the man's fibers. Muscular scoffed at the boy's pathetic way of action. He was about to mock him when the hand stuck in his muscle fibers began shifting into Hammerfist. It's not a matter of what you can do or can't do. Risking our lives and walking the walk is our job. The hand expanded until it tore out of the man's muscles in a very painful way, judging by the man's yell of pain. The man's cry of pain was short-lived when the very same hand punched him square in the face, breaking his nose in the process and sending him flying to the side of the mountain. The impact of the man landing caused an explosion of dust and debris as Izuku grabbed Kota and jumped away from the falling rocks. After making sure Kota was all right, he looked back at the man, who began escaping the crater. The villain shook the cobwebs of the punch and wiped the blood escaping his broken nose. The sight of his own blood made the man's grin grow wider, something that made Izuku glare. What a psychopath. Kota. He called out to the young boy, who flinched and looked at him. Get out of here, I'll handle this. What? No. He'll kill you. Like mom and dad. The boy cried as he clutched on Izuku's sleeve. He then flinched when Izuku took the boy's cap from the ground and placed it over Kota's head. Don't worry, I'll be fine. I'll avenge your parents. I'll avenge our parents. Izuku could still see the uncertainty in the boy's eyes. He gave Kota a reassuring smile. I promise. Kota saw this and nodded, albeit reluctantly. Izuku watched as the boy ran away from the secret base. His face turned serious and looked back at the man, just in time to block a punch from the man. He snarled at the man's manic grin. Concentrating on his palms, he used Katsuki's quirk and smacked the grin out of the villain's face as he kicked Muscular in the chest with a muscle mass-covered feet. The man staggered as Izuku summoned his claws and swiped the man's left arm. The muscle fibers weren't enough to protect the man's arm from being cut off. He was about to go for the man's face, but the man used his remaining arm to send a punch to Izuku's face. With the help of shock nullification, Izuku just took the punch and sent a hammerfist-covered punch to the man's already bloodied face. The man was sent tumbling towards the debris. Izuku expected the man to just give up since the villain is clearly at his limit. To his surprise, Muscular shakily stood up while the manic expression was still etched on his bloodied face. Yes, that's it, Blackwatch. Fight me, till one of us dies. Muscular yelled out as he charged forward, his muscle fibers pulsing as it wrapped around his torso and arms. As Muscular charged forward, Izuku was motionless and deep in thought. For a person to be so ruthless and psychopathic, not even regretting that he killed someone in front of the children of the people he killed, he couldn't help but grit his teeth as his green eyes began turning red. Fight, till one of us dies. Gladly, Izuku whispered as his hammerfist began morphing. Come on and die, Muscular yelled, swinging his muscle-enlarged fist at the boy, only for him to hit nothing but air. Before he could see where Izuku was, he felt a kick sent to his back, with force so strong it almost snapped his spine. For the nth time tonight, the villain was sent crashing to the side of the mountain. He crashed down his knees and was about to stand up when he saw something move from the corner of his remaining eye. He turned only to regret it as a spiked ball impacted on his chest, crushing his ribcage. A flail. He coughed out blood as he stared at Izuku, whose left arm appeared as a black and red chain connecting to the spiked ball. The young hero's eyes were glowing a raging red. Grr, is that all you've gak? The man's taunts were cut off when the spikes elongated, piercing through his body. Little by little he could feel his chest burning up as the spikes of the flail began to glow red. His cries of pain echoed through the mountain top, but Izuku didn't care. The spikes of his flail continued to elongate until it pierced out of the man's torso. As soon as the spikes were out, Izuku said, "Go to hell." That being said, Muscular's body was engulfed in flames. Izuku watched the man's cries turn guttural before it seized into nothing but the sound of meat sizzling. "Say hi to Overhaul for me, you son of a bitch." And with that Izuku retracted the arm towards him and absorbed the remains of the villain. As soon as the man's body was fully consumed, a wave of memories entered his mind and Izuku had to stop himself from throwing up at the ruthless and sadistic things that the man had done to his victims, and also saw how he had tortured all of his victims before killing them. Even his dad. Seeing how his dad had suffered at the hands of the villain, Izuku teared up and was glad that he was able to avenge his dad and Kota's parents. "Oh oi, are you okay?" Izuku turned to the voice and saw Kota cautiously walking towards him and looking around. Izuku could see the worry in the boy's eyes. He gave the boy a reassuring smile. "Yeah, I'm fine." He saw the boy looking down and was tearing up. Why would you go this far?" Izuku saw the boy glancing towards the severed hand of the villain and understood what the boy was talking about. So he saw. "I'm sorry that you had to see that, but I had to. If I kept him alive, he would just hurt more people," he said, walking close to the little boy. "I know I'm a hero and I shouldn't have killed him, but understand this, Kota, not everyone deserves redemption. Especially those who enjoyed tormenting others." He could see that the boy was still unsure. Izuku placed his hand on the boy's hand. "Let's not think of that for now. We have to get back to the base and we need your help." Kota was confused by that and Izuku smiled at him. "Your quirk. We need your help to put out the fire with your quirk. Like how your parents do." Kota's teary eyes widened before he nodded. Izuku nodded back and carried Kota on his back. He jumped off the secret base and began jumping from treetop to another. His eyes focused as he looked around for his classmates. It was hard because of the trees' foliage covering the forest. He shook his head as he focused on returning Kota to the base as soon as possible. And he needs to relay a message to the other pros. For now he can only wish his classmates good luck as he nears the base. As soon as Izuku reached the base, he dropped Kota off to Aizawa and told the man that the villains are after Katsuki. As he was about to leave, Aizawa stopped him for a second and told him to relay a message to Mandalay. The message: "Members of Class 1A and Class 1B, I hereby authorize all of you for combat." Every student perked up at the message. They were about to engage in combat when another message popped up. "We've identified one of the villains' objectives. The student is named Katsuki Bakugo. As much as possible, avoid combat and refrain from wandering alone. It is a direct order from your class president." That was what Izuku told Mandalay 10 minutes ago. Right now, Izuku is sprinting around in search of Mei. She had also participated in the test of courage that both classes had partaken in, and she was with Ochako, Melissa, and Suyu when the fire had started. His sprint became faster when he used his sonar senses and found where the girls were. He gritted his teeth when he saw that the 4 girls were not alone. As he reached their location, Izuku kicked the other person who was with the girls. The kick sent the person tumbling to the trees with a loud thud. Izuku looked over at the girls and widened his head to see that some of their clothing was ripped, exposing some skin. He saw the terrified expression on Mei, who had her hands over her exposed chest. Izuku took off his hoodie jacket and gave it to the support student. "You bastard. As soon as I was having fun and close enough to turn them into my personal bitches, you had to screw it all up." Izuku turned to the person he had just kicked to the trees and his eyes turned from shock to rage in a second. "Minoru Mineta," Izuku said with venom laced in his tone. The short boy smirked. "You're damn right, it's me. The same boy that Izuku had thrashed in the sports festival. So he's part of the villains now," Izuku thought as he glared daggers at the grape-haired boy. "Give me one reason not to tear you to shreds right now." Izuku growled out as his claws began to take shape. The other boy didn't even look fazed as he plucked an orb from his head. "Oh please, you don't scare me, and what had happened months ago was just a fluke. You can't beat me." he said as he chucked a ball towards Izuku, who didn't even move to avoid it. As the orb landed on Izuku's chest, Mineta smirked. Boom. That's when Izuku noticed a red light blinking on the orb. As soon as Mineta said, boom, the ball exploded. The explosion caused an explosion of dust and smoke to engulf Izuku's spot. Mineta was cackling at his piece of work. With the help of an expert support item manufacturer, he was able to incorporate built-in bombs in the balls on his head that exploded upon impact. He knew it was only a fluke that Izuku had defeated him in the sports festival. Now that he didn't let the boy summon his abominations, he was free to get his hands over some bitches. Just the thought of himself getting his hands on those bouncy. His thoughts were interrupted when the dust cloud cleared with Izuku standing there like nothing happened. Guys, go back to the base. I'll take care of this, Izuku said to the girls. The girls were about to protest, but when they saw Izuku's blank expression, they didn't say anything and just took off. All while wishing Izuku good luck. Mineta was confused at first and glared at Izuku for making the girls leave, but shrugged it off when he threw another orb onto Izuku. He'll just run after them. But to his surprise and shock, Izuku wasn't harmed. Just his t-shirt getting torn due to the explosions, but that as well shocked him as Izuku's shirt was returning back to its normal state. The shorter boy began to panic as he frantically threw a barrage of orbs at Izuku, who just started walking calmly towards the little villain. As he took another step, Mineta would take one backwards. Desperate and terrified at Izuku's blank expression, he threw another orb and yelled out, "Get away from me!" Izuku caught the ball in his hand, threw it back to the villain's torso and exploded. This caused the villain to get launched to a nearby tree. Mineta tried to stand up only for him to be grabbed by the neck and lifted from the ground. The young villain tried scratching Izuku's arms, but Izuku's hold tightened. Before Mineta could talk, Izuku, with a bit of blacklight on his hand, jabbed the boy's necks. The poke was strong enough to puncture through the skin of the boy's throat. As soon as he did that, Izuku let go of Mineta's neck and let the boy drop to the ground. He looked over at the boy who was clutching his bleeding neck and just turned away. As he began walking away, Mineta spoke up. "Is that all you see can do, hero? Pathetic." He was cut off when he choked. His neck began to throb uncontrollably as the searing pain of the jab grew tenfold. What did you do to me?" the boy yelled out, but to no luck as Izuku just continued walking away. "Get back, Gah." Those were Mineta's last words as a black and red tendrils escaped his neck and latched onto the trees before it retracted back with great speed and strength that it crushed him, killing him in the process. Dash 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 dash. As soon as he finished dealing with his former classmate, Izuku was met with a rampaging dark shadow engulfing Tokiyami. Shoji told him that dark shadow became uncontrollable when a villain ambushed them. Izuku simply used Todoroki's quirk, his fire side to be precise, to weaken the sentient quirk. It took him a few seconds before dark shadow returned back into Tokiyami. It didn't take long for them to meet Katsuki and Shoto, the latter carrying an unconscious Kosei Saburaba. They were dealing with a villain that Izuku recognized as a part of the escapees of Tartarus that were in the death row, Moonfish, a villain that almost looked like a Cenobite from Hellraiser, a horror movie from the pre-quirk era that Izuku used to watch back as Alex back in his high school days. With team effort, Izuku and the others defeated the villain. As they tried walking back to the base, Izuku looked back at his classmates only to find that Tokiyami and Bakugo were nowhere to be seen. Looking around, they saw a man wearing a white mask with weird black geometric designs holding two blue marbles in between his fingers. They began a chase of cat and mouse. The only difference is that the cats were sending large-scale icebergs at the mouse, who was impressively making use of the air pressure caused by the icebergs to make himself float. Desperately, Izuku combined earth flow with blacklight and created a juggernaut. He then ordered said creature to throw him, Shoji, and Shoto in compress, the villain, direction before telling it to take Saburaba back to the base. Launching to the sky, they tackled compress to the ground. However, they were forced to dodge when a wave of blue fire was sent in their direction. As they dodged to the side, the masked villain turned himself as a marble to dodge the attack before getting out of the marble. "To think they came after me. What marvelous thoughts take flight," Compress said, rubbing his arm shoulder as he walked away from the crater. And Bakugo, a villain with black hair and the owner of the blue fire. Well, of course, Compress began searching his pockets, seemingly finding nothing. That's when Shoji showed his hand that held 2 blue marbles. They expected the villains to panic, but they were confused when the only thing they got was claps from Compress. Their confusion was short-lived when the marbles turned into ice. The villain taunted them, opting for Shoto and Izuku to charge forward. They were halted when black mist suddenly appeared from behind the villains. The students recognized the mist from the USJ incident and know what was the purpose of said mist. One by one, the villains began to enter the mist until it was only Compress, who showed that the marbles were in his mouth, and the black-hair man, to whom Compress called Dobby. They were about to leave when a laser beam hit Compress on the side of the face. The hit caused the villain to drop the marbles from his mouth. The trio began charging the 2 marbles, only for Izuku to drop to his knees as the overuse of his quirk began to take a toll on him, opting Shoji and Shoto to take the marbles. A fact that the former had accomplished. However, Todoroki was not as lucky as Dobby snatched the marble first. How sad. Shoto Todoroki, Dobby said, fingers clutching the marble. Izuku forced his body to stand up but it was no use. He used too much biomass. But even with that he used all his willpower to take a step and another, until he was sprinting towards the villains, who had just released the marble and showed Katsuki being held on the neck by Dobby. Katsuki, Izuku yelled desperately. Stay back, Izuku, was the blonde's last words before the mist completely engulfed them, and with that the villain, alongside Katsuki, were gone. Izuku was sobbing uncontrollably. He had failed. He had failed to save Katsuki. What kind of pro-hero fails to save one student? Or did he? Izuku's cries began to turn into chuckles before it turned into full-blown laughter. He turned to the side near the foliage of trees, Katsuki walking out of the bushes, a smirk creeping onto his face. The same could be said with Shoto and Shoji. Izuku smirked back at his classmates as his form began to wobble. Phase 1. Complete, Izuku said before collapsing into a pile of red mud. Previously, Izuku smirked back at his classmates as his form began to wobble. Phase 1. Complete, Izuku said before collapsing into a pile of mud. Within the walls of a familiar bar within Kamino Ward, the League of Villains, or rather, the remaining team, gathered around the counter as they looked over at an unconscious form of Katsuki Bakugo in the corner of the room. A look of satisfaction and victory can be seen through the eyes of Tamura Shigaraki. The abduction was a success. The League of Villains just acquired a new party member, he thought before looking back at his gathered team. But we were reduced by 3. Which is unfortunate. Oh, well, we got what we needed for the League's success, he thought as he took a swig of his drink. As he did, he failed to see Katsuki open one eye as a smirk formed on his face. Phase 1. Complete, initiate Phase 2 in T-15 minutes. He thought as he looked down the cuffs on his arms. Good thing this quirk suppressors are not as strong as UA's. If it were, then my disguise would be busted, he thought. Unlike the belief of the League about their successful abduction, they failed to double-check who the person they abducted. Because they never abducted Katsuki Bakugo, the person they got is Izuku Midoriya. And they had heard of this abduction before the villains could arrive at the camp and had made a plan to counter this. It all started the night of the day Class 1A arrived at the camp. Flashback AN. Chapter 31. As Izuku walked into the thick foliage of trees that shielded the ground of any light coming from the full moon. Wandering deeper into the forest as he followed a silhouette of a person using his sonar senses. He recognized the person's silhouette but was confused and worried how they found out about their location. Whatever they wanted from them, he was going to find out. No matter what. As he reached the location, he stood face to face with the person and gave them an erasure-filled glare. I'm gonna say this in the most respectful way possible. What the fuck are doing here? How did you find us? He asked as Blacklight began surrounding his arms. He was going to get an answer from this person, one way or another. The person just looked at him with raised hands. No need for hostilities, Izuku Midoriya. I came in peace, he started, causing Izuku to scoff. I highly doubt that, Izuku said in a growl. Touché. The person started chuckling, which didn't amuse Izuku one bit, before opting for a serious stare. But in all seriousness, I didn't come here to cause any troubles to any of you currently in your precious camp. Well, at least not yet. That caused Izuku's glare to harden as claws subconsciously manifested over his arms. What do you mean by, not yet? He asked, his patience slowly disappearing, and it was evident with the killing intent he was projecting. I mean that the League of Villains will attack in 2 days, the same time as today, the person said. Izuku's eyes widened at that. But before he could respond, the person continued. Those who will be arriving here consist of a few villains and a Nomu, with the sole purpose of abducting a student. Who's their target? Izuku asked, seriousness evident in his voice. The person looked at him for a bit before dropping the bomb. Katsuki Bakugo. His serious demeanor dropped to shock. They want Katsuki. But why? Why would they pick Katsuki of all people? He thought, confusing showing in his face. Seemingly reading his mind, the person spoke up. I believe Tamura Shigaraki wanted your classmate to join the league due to his violent behavior back in the sports festival. Plus the fact that Katsuki Bakugo somehow has a violent relationship with you. That actually makes sense, Izuku thought, but as he thought of that, he realized something. Even if Katsuki has violence written all over him, I doubt that he would join the League of Villains. I've known him all my life, and I know that he wanted to be a hero since we were babies, he said, looking up to the person in front of him. The person hummed in response. I figured that'd be the case, he said before looking back at the boy. But regardless, he is the prime target of the league during the event that will occur in 2 days. I wish for you all to be prepared for this, the person said before turning to leave. As he took a few steps away, Izuku called out. How can I know that you aren't lying? Heck, how can I know that you aren't tricking me right now? The person halted on his tracks and turned around. The person placed their hand in their pocket and tossed something towards Izuku. The young hero looked at the object thrown and saw that it was a vial with what appears to be blood. That blood came from one of the villains in the group that will be abducting Katsuki Bakugo. I know that you can copy anyone's quirk by consuming their DNA, so I hope that this will be enough for you to trust me, the person said as he walked away to the deeper parts of the forest, completely leaving Izuku's sight. Izuku just looked at the vial in his hand before placing it in his pocket. You guys heard that right, Izuku said to the readers. No wait. Cut. That's not part of the script. Izuku in the forest scene, take 2. You guys heard that right, Izuku said. As soon as he said that, Shoto and Katsuki emerged from the bushes as they approached him. The duo just nodded at his words as they looked at the direction where the person had gone. Loud and clear, Shoto said. Katsuki could only huff in agreement. He opted to click his tongue. So Handjob wants me to join their stupid group, he said as a frown showed in his face. Am I really that bad a few months ago? Izuku and Shoto just looked at him with a knowing look, causing him to blush and look away. Don't answer that, he grumbled. Smart choice, Todoroki said, causing the ash-blonde boy to glare at him. So what do we do now? He asked Izuku. The green-haired boy looked at him with a serious expression. What else? We go tell Mr. Aizawa and the Pussycats. They deserve to know, he said before a plan entered his mind. Plus, I think I have a plan to propose to them, he mumbled with an evil smirk on his face, causing his classmates to gulp and take a step back in reflex. The last time they saw that look from their class president, they got their asses kicked. I almost feel bad for them, Shoto and Katsuki thought simultaneously. Almost. End of flashback. That same night, Izuku and the other two had informed Eraserhead, the WWPC, Vlad King, and the rest of the US staff, the latter being through a video call, about what the young hero had talked about with the Rogue Love member. To say that they were skeptical with the villain's words, but Izuku told them about the blood vial that the person had given him. They questioned the legitimacy of the blood, to which Izuku drank, much to the shock of the heroes. But the moment Izuku receives the memories of the villain, which according to him was a villain named Jin Bubegawara, also known by the alias, Twice, Quirk, Double, allows the user to create an exact replica of anything or anyone but can be reduced back to a mud-like state if hit with a certain amount of damage. A versatile quirk if you ask Izuku, but having gone to the wrong hands could be trouble all over. But even with that and this Jin guy being the person with this quirk, Izuku couldn't tell if it is a good thing or a bad thing that the double user was in the LOV. At a first glance, it's bad that the man is a villain. But looking into the man's memories, Izuku saw that the man was just misunderstood. To which, Izuku wants to talk to Jin, to save the man from the influence of the League. Plus the fact that the man's purpose in joining the League of Villains was to search for the only person that he views as a sister, Himiko Toga. A.N. Insert dramatic. Dun dun dunnn. Sound effect here. That's why Izuku proposed to be the one to take Katsuki's place, by disguising as the explosion user, to be abducted. As soon as he said that, everyone in the room looked at him as if he had grown a second head, which wasn't really impossible, and almost immediately declined. It was Nezu, All Might, and surprisingly, Aizawa who had agreed with the plan. Seeing that there are a lot of positive outcomes in this plan. Though, there could be negative outcomes to this plan, but if done correctly could come to their advantage in capturing the villains. As soon as the plan was finalized, Izuku informed some of his classmates. Them being Mezu, Fumikage, Koji, Hitoshi, Mashirao, Tsuyu, Momo, and Melissa. Why only them? Because they are the only ones who would follow orders from the heroes, the rest have a tendency to go through their emotions such as Eijiro, Ochako, and Mina. Though Tenya was trustworthy, he has a tendency to be swayed to do the opposite. Heck, the blue-haired boy almost went to Hosu just to hunt down Stain a few months ago. Regardless of that, the plan was simple. Izuku disguises as Katsuki and gets himself abducted. There he waits for the heroes to arrive in the area and he reveals himself to capture the League of Villains. Simple, right? There's no way this plan would be fucked up. Right. Well, let's hope for the best. He slowly opened his eyes and faked a groan as though he had just woken up. On instinct and a way to be more convincing, he immediately widened his eyes and tried lunging forward, like how Katsuki used to be. His acting made the villains smirk at his efforts of escape. He was about to yell at the villains when he heard a noise coming from the television that he just now realized was turned on and was showing a live broadcast of a press conference with Nezu, Aizawa, and Vlad King alongside with reporters from different news stations questioning UA about the compiling villain attacks on the students. Izuku's eyes widened as some of the reporters continued to criticize them. He was confused on why these people would be this quick to judge them. Izuku was then snapped out of his stare at the television when he heard Shigaraki huff in amusement. "It's quite mysterious, isn't it?" the villain said, causing the young hero to look at him. "Why are the heroes getting criticized?" The man continued to talk about the flaws of the hero system. He listened as Compress tried to justify how they didn't just, casually, abduct him and they were being shackled by the hero society. So they want Katsuki to join them because they think that he was being held back by the law and heroes around him. Spinner, a Stain fanboy, then talks about how heroes aren't heroes anymore when they protect others by demanding compensation, be it by money, power, or fame. Which has a point, but it being Stain's ideology of killing heroes to lessen the corruption isn't a good solution to it. But thinking about it, made Izuku question himself, as he too killed villains. Was he also a hypocrite? Was he also a villain? Can he still be called a hero after all of the deaths that he had caused? The green-haired boy disguised as ash blonde didn't talk nor meet the villain's eye as he looked down and used his sonar senses and noticed a group of people outside of the vicinity. He recognizes some of them as All Might and Endeavor. Inwardly, he smirked as his plan was progressing. He then felt the cuff on his hand release the full strength of his quirk, well, not like half of it was suppressed anyway. He raised his hand and massaged it, trying to remove the slight numb feeling on it. He then saw a hand in front of him and looked up to the owner, which happened to be Shigaraki. "Katsuki Bakugo, I am extending my hand to you to help you get off the shackles of the hypocrisy of the two faces we call heroes. The League welcomes you as a mem." He was cut off as an explosive hand hit him in the face, causing him to take a step back and the hand on his face to fly off to the floor. Everyone in the room looked over at him. They then looked over at Shigaraki, who was looking over at the discarded hand glove on the wooden floor. Bold of you to assume that Katsuki was going to join your little club, he said, not caring if he had sabotaged his own disguise. Like, I can understand all of your motives, but you're just the same as the heroes you call hypocrites. If the heroes have selfish actions, then what does it make you? Izuku heard Shigaraki mumble something before picking up the glove on the ground. He then began looking over at a nearby monitor. Teacher, lend me your stray. Izuku didn't let him finish as he shot another explosion at the monitor, shattering it in the process. That caused Kurogiri and Shigaraki's eyes to widen as they looked over at the debris scattered across the floor. Oi, look at me when I'm talking to you, Izuku said in a serious tone. The look of malice on Shigaraki's face grew as the villain. The manchild then charged at him with his hands forward. You bastard, he said as he made contact with the blonde boy, only to be confused that his quirk wasn't working. Wah! He was cut off once more when the student kicked him in the stomach, sending him to the ground. Before Shigaraki could stand up, a knock came from the entrance as a voice called out. Hello, pizza delivery. Everyone, besides Izuku, blinked in confusion as they stared at the door. That's until the wall of the bar exploded. Smashhhhhh. All Might's voice echoed within the explosion of debris. The villains began to panic as Shigaraki called out to Kurogiri to open a warp gate. Before the latter could do that, Kamui Woods used his quirk and tied up all the villains, while Gran Torino, an elderly hero, sped past the villains' defenses and knocked Dabi out. As expected from the young and talented Kamui Woods, and the assuming veteran, Gran Torino, All Might started. You can't run away, League of Villains. Why, you ask? Because we are here, the #1 hero declared with a smile. Despite the mask hiding his face, the panic was evident with compress voice. All Might, that press conference then, the timing, it was all planned. Mr. Tree Guy, you're pulling too tight, more pressure, Twice said. This time around, we won't be as careless, the voice of Edgeshot called out from the door as he slid in. The pizza delivery, it's not just us, we've got more skilled heroes like Endeavor surrounding the outside with the police. It must have been scary, you did well to endure. Well done, young Bakugo, All Might said, before smirking. Or should I say, young Midoriya. The members of the League's eyes widened as black and red tendrils began to escape the blonde boy's body as he morphed into a smirking Izuku. Yo, he said as he raised his hand and winked at Shigaraki, who was growling with hate to the young hero. You bastard, you tricked us, the Decay user yelled out to the UA student. I'll fucking kill you. He then turned to Kurogiri. Kurogiri, bring as many of them as you can. He barked out, bring the Nomu. It took a few seconds but nothing came. That's when Kurogiri spoke up. I'm sorry, Tamura Shigaraki, but the Nomus that should be at the designated location aren't there. All Might then explained that another team of heroes had already raided the other location and eliminated the Nomus. A fact that Izuku had smirked at. Well done, Momo. No more games. It ends here, Tamura Shigaraki. It ends here, you say. Don't make me laugh, we've only gotten started. Izuku could see from the side that Shigaraki was gritting his teeth. Justice, peace, this rubbish heap society capped by such vague concepts. I will destroy it, and I'll start by removing the cap that is All Might. I've only just begun to gather comrades, nonsense. This is just the beginning. Kurog. He was cut off when Kurogiri groaned and slumped, indicating his unconsciousness. That caused a panicked reaction from Magna, a woman with a muscular build. That's when they saw Edgeshot appear as a string coming out of Kurogiri's neck, being the one to stun Kurogiri. Shigaraki was shaking in fury. Everything was crumbling before his eyes, the irony. Panic began to ensue within Shigaraki's head as he tried to disintegrate the wood, but he could feel his quirk. No point using your quirk, I erased it. He looked up to Izuku, whose eyes were glowing red and his hair floating. That looked on his face. I hate it. I hate it all, the villain thought as his anger rose. Where is he now, Shigaraki? All Might yelled at the villain. I hate you, Tamura yelled out in return. As he did that, black sludge erupted from behind him as Nomus appeared out of nowhere. Everyone in the room was shocked at this. Izuku was about to launch himself to the Nomus when he felt something weird. The heroes were frantic about the newcomers. What the? His thoughts were cut off when he began coughing out the black sludge as it began to envelop him. He tried calling out All Might, but it was too late. From within the sludge, he could feel his surroundings shift. As soon as he escaped the black sludge, he began coughing violently, the slimy texture causing discomfort to him. That's when he noticed that he was no longer in the bar. As he looked around, his eyes widened in shock as he noticed that he was in the middle of what appears to be a crater. Collapsed buildings, broken glass shards, injured heroes scattered around the area. What the? Where am I? He thought out loudly. This is confusing. A voice called out from behind him, causing him to flinch. You're not Katsuki Bakugo. Just the presence of the person behind him caused every single muscle in his body to go tense as he felt suffocated by the intimidating aura in the air. Slowly and shakily, he turned around. As he does, he is met by a man as tall as All Might, wearing a black suit and what looks to be a mask covering his whole face. Just the aura and appearance gives out an authoritative and powerful impression to Izuku. The young hero gritted his teeth. Whoever this man is, Izuku could tell that he was a force to be reckoned with. Before he could say anything, he felt coughing from behind him. Turning a bit, his eyes widened when he saw that all of the members of the League of Villain had also been transported to their location. The man began comforting Tamura. That was the moment that Izuku realized that he was surrounded. Izuku readied himself for combat. Before he could do anything, he heard something approaching them in full speed. It looks like he's coming after all. As soon as the mysterious figure said it, a speeding blue and yellow blur went past Izuku's peripheral vision. Said blur, who Izuku identified as All Might, attacked the figure, who caught the fists with ease. I'm gonna make you give everything back, all for one, the thunderous voice of the #1 hero yelled out. You're going to kill me again, All Might. The man, now identified to be called All for One, responded back as he pushed All Might back. The #1 hero landed beside the 35th, who had just kicked Spinner and Magna away. The teacher and student duo stood back to back as they eyed the villains around them. They were clearly outnumbered, but both have strength to spare. Glancing at each other, they both nodded and went back to look at the villains. Izuku then began channeling his quirk as he summoned his muscle mass. Without a word, they charged on their respective opponents, All Might with All for One and Izuku with the rest of the league. They have to stall for time as the heroes are still on their way. In the 1A dorm, as the impending battle in the Camino ward was about to rage on, Class 1A sat anxiously in the common room, their eyes glued to the television as they watched the press conference between the UA staff, consisting of Eraserhead, Vlad King, and Principal Nezu, and the reporters, who began questioning the staff on the safety of the students under the school's care. To say that they were shocked at the doubtful questions being thrown at their teachers was an understatement. They would understand that the safety of the students is a priority, but they are hero in training. Trouble is something that they will encounter along the way. Plus the fact that the public does not know that the victim of the hostage-taking is actually a disguised Izuku. But still, the hostility was suffocating for the young heroes, more affecting Shinso and Melissa. Himiko, being a former villainess, is used to the hostile words. But that doesn't make it easier for them to take the harsh words being said to their teachers. Across the room, Eijiro Kirishima stood up from his seat, causing some of his friends to look at him. We can't just sit here and watch all of this happen, right? He asked his classmates. We need to do something. The rest of the class looked over at the hardening user, but none of them responded at the red-haired boy's words. They were all unsure what to say. Well, everyone beside one. For the last time, shitty hair. We can't do anything about it. Katsuki spoke up. Izuku told us not to get involved with this because we don't have a hero license. Some of them nodded as Momo spoke up. That's right. Which means Izuku doesn't want any of us to get in trouble with our teacher or the authorities. She added to Katsuki's words. Despite the words of their vice president, Kirishima was still not convinced. But if he really thought of that, why didn't he tell everyone of his plans? It was Iida who spoke up this time to respond to the red-haired boy. Because he knows that some of us will be riled up with our emotions and ignore the orders of our teachers so we can get involved with the plan. I have to agree with him on that notion, because quite frankly, I would be easily swayed by my emotions. I almost did so back in Hosu. He said, whispering the last words. All we can do now is wait for the best to happen in the plan and pray for our classmates and the heroes fighting alongside him." That caused a couple of nods from the rest while the others just sat there deep in thought. There was an awkward silence within the class when Kaminari suddenly spoke up. "Ah guys," he said, slowly looking back at his classmates. "You might want to see this," he said, pointing to the television. The class turned to the television and were shocked at the sight that met them. Broadcasting live is a helicopter shot of the destruction in Kamino Ward in Yokohama. The pro-heroes can be seen laying down in the epicenter of the crater that once were buildings and apartments. In the center of it all is a man with a mask that looks like respirators. Their eyes widened as they saw another figure emerge from thin air, covered in black sludge. They recognized the figure as their own class president, Izuku Midoriya, who was coughing out the sludge from his mouth. It didn't take long for more figures emerging from black sludge to enter the shot. They watched as All Might suddenly arrived in the scene and was face to face with the villain. The villain blocked his attack and forced All Might to jump back and land back to back with Izuku, who had just kicked some of the villains away. Class 1A's eyes widened at the scene, showing as both teacher and student began to charge the villains with speed unimaginable. Kamino, Yokohama explosions and metal clanging can be heard throughout Kamino as Izuku and All Might push off the villains trying to attack them. Or in Izuku's case, who now equipped with his muscle mass and punch spinner's swords as the blades shattered on impact as the attack caused the scattering blades on the ground as he delivered a kick to the reptilian villain towards the other villains, stopping them from walking through the portal that All for One created using Kurogiri's quirk. He then landed in a crouch before he was forced to jump away as he narrowly avoided Shigaraki's hand from touching him. As he did that, he could feel his body being pulled as a bright blue light covered his whole body. Before he knew it, he was pulled towards Magna as the buff woman readied her weapon to use it as a club. Brows furrowing, Izuku used the momentum to tilt his body fast enough to summon his shield to block the giant magnet. The impact caused a shockwave that blew dust clouds, forcing some of the villains to shield their eyes. Taking advantage of the close distance, Izuku let some of his tendrils wrap around the giant magnet. He then raised his free arm and pointed it at Magna. Without a word, an explosion escaped Izuku's palm as it pushed Magna away, deactivating the blue light surrounding him. He could have always used Zone Erasure to deactivate all of the villain's quirks, but doing so would have also affected All Might, which in turn would have caused All Might's muscle form to deteriorate, exposing him to the public. Plus, he doesn't know what type of quirk All for One, the villain All Might is fighting at the moment, has. So it will be too risky to do so. His mind was interrupted as a strong air pressure erupted from the other side of the field as he saw All Might was flung towards the nearby buildings, destroying them in the process. His eyes widened at the strength of the pressure that just easily sent the number one hero flying. Atmospheric compression plus locomotive corkscrew. Explosiveness x4, muscular enhancement x3. All for One started as the dust covering him began to dissipate. This combo is pretty fun. Maybe I'll collect some more augmentation-type quirks. The masked villain said as he opened and closed the hand that released the air pressure. Izuku, who was staring in shock at the true leader of the League of Villains, gritted his teeth as he charged forward to the villain, arms morphing into claws. He sped past Spinner and twice, the latter falling down to his face. The young boy's eyes dead set onto the villain as he opted for a slashing motion. As his attack began closing in on the villain, Izuku failed to see the villain's fingers darkening in a black color with red lines extending towards his torso. The moment he saw that, he felt it puncture through his back. He could feel his spine cracking at the force and speed of the attack. The hit forced him to release his claws as he clutched at the tendrils stabbing his body. Quite a powerful quirk you have there, Izuku Midoriya. It would be nicer if it were mine. The villain said as the tendrils' red lines began to glow. That didn't sound like good news to Izuku. Whatever the villain means, he doesn't want to know. He had to do something quick before the villain could do what he was planning. He groaned at the pain carving into his literal bones as his right arm quickly shifted to his blade and slashed the hardened tendrils off of his body before kicking off the villain. He jumped off a few meters away from All for One but had to drop down on one knee as he clutched his bleeding chest, which was beginning to heal. He gritted his teeth as he slowly stood up, eyes picking up a figure to the side, causing a smirk to form from his lips. This caught All for One's attention. Before the man could ask, All Might came back, his fist hitting All for One square in the face, sending the villain flying towards the debris. So much for Izuku's amusement, he failed to notice the other villains charging towards him in a pincer attack. The moment Izuku noticed, he was already surrounded. But before the villains could lay a finger onto him, a yellow blur impacted on each of the villains surrounding him. The hits caused the villains to be knocked out instantly. Izuku watched as Gran Torino had joined the fray as the soles of his boots released air pressure that helped him perform such quick maneuvers. All Might looked up to his former teacher with a serious expression. "You're late." The old man scoffed at his blonde student. "You're just too fast to keep up with," he said as he hovered a few feet up the ground. All for One took note of the newly arrived villain and recognized him. Shimura's close friend, he thought as he slowly stood up from the debris. "Hey kid, you okay there?" Gran Torino asked, pointing at Izuku. Izuku then patted his chest and noticed the wounds and pain had dissipated. He nodded at the retired hero. "Yeah, I'm all healed up. Thanks for the save, sir," he said to the man. Said man just smirks. "At least he's not as cocky as some people I know," he thought before noticing Shigaraki running towards them. "There's one more villain over here. You're done for," he yelled as he flew towards the decay user. As he does so, All for One noticed the disadvantage and used the tendrils from before and elongated them. "You got us good, didn't you? In one fell swoop no less," the man said as the tendrils moved towards All Might, who barely dodged it. "The tables have been turned," the villain said. All Might watched as the tendrils pierced the unconscious Magna on the chest. This confused Toshinor before All for One spoke up once more. "Force activation. Magnetism," the villain said as the lone female member of the league began glowing. As Sorihiko was getting close to Tamura, the latter stood his ground and reached out his hand to use his quirk to the old man. Turn to dust. As the two were about to collide, Shigaraki's body began to glow blue. He was then pulled backwards by Magna's quirk. The rest of the unconscious members of the League of Villains, besides Kurogiri and Magna, began launching one by one into the warp gate. Izuku gritted his teeth as he failed to grab Twice's unconscious body. They watched as All for One unceremoniously tossed Magna into the portal as the tendrils hit Gran Torino away from Shigaraki. "No, teacher," Tamura said, eyes widening at his master's actions. "With that body here." He was cut off when a green, red, and black blur appeared in front of the drifting villain. Before Shigaraki could fully identify the person in front of him, he felt a stinging pain on his arm. Or at least where they used to be, as said limbs fell down to the ground, blood and gore spraying out of the cut-off limbs. "You'll pay for this, you bastard," was the last thing Shigaraki said as he saw Izuku's glaring eyes. Tamura's scream in pain and anger echoed through the portal before he was fully shrouded into the portal. The black mist dissipated as Izuku stood there, blade still positioned down, failing to notice Shigaraki's blood began to get absorbed into his body. "That's for disintegrating my arm back in USJ, you son of a bitch," he thought as he stood up. Not long after he straightened his stance, an intense killing intent covered the field. Slowly turning to the epicenter of the KI and saw All for One, looking at his direction. "You insolent brat, do you have any idea what you just did?" All for One spoke in a dark tone that made Izuku back off a bit. Before the man could elaborate or Izuku could respond, All Might flew forward, a fist cocked back aiming at All for One's covered head. Transmission. All for One thought as black sludge covered Gran Torino's body. The sludge suddenly appeared in front of the villain, as did Gran Torino, who took the punch straight to the face. Impact reversal, he thought as All Might's fist recoiled back. "Sorry," All Might called out to Gran Torino. "Even though I came here just to save Tamura," the man started as he pointed his left arm over at Izuku, who was charging forward with his muscle mass equipped. "If it's a fight you want, then it's a fight you'll get." Izuku's eyes widened as the villain sent another air pressure towards him. He tried dodging it but was unable to do so as the attack sent him flying and tumbling in the debris before stopping as he crashed through glass. Chunks of debris and glass shards scattered everywhere as the young hero shakily stood up. Even with his shock nullification, he couldn't help but be affected by the villain's attack. Just how strong is that man? Izuku thought as he could hear the distant sounds of the battlefield, even the faint helicopter in the air. Looking around, he was confused at the sight that met him. Large glass containers that had tubes inside and outside of them. There was a nauseating scent, probably a mix of blood and chemicals, that entered Izuku's nostrils, almost causing him to vomit his dinner. As he looked around, his eyes widened at a familiar pile of clothing. Approaching the pile, he grit his teeth as he crouched down to pick up Ragdoll's headpiece, now broken in half and had blood on it. Those bastards, he thought, using consume on the blood residue. Closing his eyes, he watched through Ragdoll's memories how the villains had ambushed her from the shadows. He saw how a Nomu with blades extruding from its body had attacked her and caused her to be injured before she barely escaped to try to inform his comrades about the attack, but she was then cornered by Dabi. The last thing Izuku saw in her memories is how she was suddenly surrounded by black mist as she blacked out. They'll pay for this, he thought as he stood up. Now All for One is going to feel hell. He was about to charge back to the fight when he was forced to grit his teeth as another wave of memories entered his mind. Veins pulsing as he clutched his head as a blurry image of ashes in a crumbled backyard with puddles of blood appeared in his mind. He was shocked at the memory as he looked around. Whose memory is this? He thought to himself. His inner thoughts were interrupted when he heard a massive explosion coming from the battlefield. The explosion caused him to run towards the direction of the field. Halting at the exit of the collapsing building, his eyes widened at the sight that met him. No, he said as he began charging forward towards the villain, with his quirk morphing through his limbs. Dash 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 dash. The crowd in the busy street of Camino Ward couldn't believe their eyes. All Might, the #1 hero, and known as the symbol of peace, is standing face to face with probably the strongest villain he had fought since his debut. Their eyes widened as their hero tanked a shockwave that destroyed the ground he was standing on. As the smoke that formed from the shockwave dissipated, shock and confusion entered their minds. The usually bulky and muscular blonde man was replaced by a skin and bones that would only take a breeze to push down. What has happened? Everyone is seeing this, right? The voice from the screen in the buildings in Yokohama. All Might seems to be withering away. No, it can't be, one of the crowd said. All Might, another one spoke. You have to win. The rest of the crowd were confused, uncertain, shocked, and in disbelief. But they all know one thing. All Might has to win this. He needs to win this. Don't lose, All Might. You can do it, everyone yelled out from deep within their hearts. Dash 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 dash. Class 1A were shocked at the sight that met the screen of their common room television. They couldn't believe the state that All Might is in. Most of them had their hands covering their mouths. Melissa was not having the best time of her life. Her Uncle Might, the person who had become her second father and had been there for her ever since. The person who gave her a chance to help people through passing on one for all to her. That person, looking terribly battered at the current fight. Uncle Might, she whispered as tears flowed down her cheek as Momo held her close. What? Katsuki watched in horror at the form of the person he looked up to the most. The person that made him believe that being a hero means victory towards every villain that they come across. But looking at the state that the man is in, baffled him. No. This can't be happening, he thought as his chest began to tighten as his breath quickened. All Might, he whispered, his hands clenching and unclenching as tears welled in his eyes. Win, All Might, he yelled as his class followed suit. Dash 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 dash. Those hollow cheeks and sunken eyes. A pitiful excuse for a top hero if I ever see one. All for One taunted as Toshinori dropped down on one knee, coughing blood non-stop. But don't be ashamed, that is your true form from the beginning, after all, isn't it? The villain chuckled darkly. All Might could only glare at the villain as his quirk's limit made itself known. Before he could talk back, All for One spoke up once more. The entirety of Japan now sees just how weak their symbol of peace is, the man said before turning back at the thin man. And now, they will witness his death. All for One said, as red sparks of lightning surrounded his outstretched arm, which released a ripping sound as it expanded in size. Goodbye, All Might, All for One said. He was about to shoot the amplified bolt when, Gak, he yelped in pain as he could feel a sharp object pierce through his shoulder blade. Get over here. From behind, Izuku yelled out as he pulled the villain towards him and launched the man towards the collapsed building, causing debris and dust to explode on impact. Landing in front of All Might, Izuku used his tendrils and sent parts of them towards the direction of All for One. Before it could land, Izuku released his hold from the tendrils and created 2 brawler hunters from the biomass released, which charged at All for One's direction. Turning towards the number 1 hero's direction, he winced at the battered state that the man he looked up to. The memory of their first meeting flashed in Izuku's mind. The memory of the first time he saw the man in action and saving civilians from an accident, how he smiled through the devastated surroundings to ease up those around him. He compared that man to the man in front of him and gritted his teeth. It was his fault this was happening. It was his plan that led to this confrontation with All for One. It was his plan that caused All Might's vulnerable form to be exposed to the public. It was all his damn fault this is happening. Young Midoriya. That snapped him out of his self-deprecation. Looking up to the man in front of him, who was shakily standing up. He saw a weak smile on the hero's face and it caused tears to well in his eyes. I know you are blaming yourself for this, but don't be. There is nothing to be sorry about. But All Might. He was cut off when All Might gave him a stern look. But nothing, young Midoriya. The man said. Whether tonight I survive or not, it doesn't matter. I had a long run and looking back at your class and you specifically, I know that the future is safe even without me in it. The man said, giving him a reassuring smile. All Might, Izuku said, only to be interrupted by slow clapping from behind. Looking back, his eyes widened at All for One, who was now floating up in the air. Izuku noticed the man's mask was now destroyed, leaving his face, if you can still consider to call it that, exposed for the world to see. How heartwarming. The villain said sarcastically. You almost made me cry there, All Might. Almost. The man said, landing down on the ground. Izuku followed the man's move and widened his eyes at the sight behind the man. His brawlers lay lifeless on the ground and were mutilated. His eyes filled with fury as he began to walk towards the villain. He only got to walk 2 steps forward before collapsing on one knee. Young Midoriya, All Might called out, damn it. I overused my quirk again, he thought as he gritted his teeth. All for One stared at him with mirth. What's this? Little hero out of steam. The man started, smirking at the growl that escaped Izuku's mouth. That's a shame, I was looking forward to going toe-to-toe with you. Oh well, the man said as his fingers formed his own tendrils, elongating as it stabbed on Izuku's shoulders and pulled him towards the man. I'll just take your quirk then, the man said. All Might watched in horror as the villain held Izuku by the head. He saw a familiar red aura surrounding the man's hand. No, he yelled in his mind. Gran Torino also looked in horror. He was about to charge the man, but his injuries and old age are stopping him from doing anything. All for One expected the familiar surge of power and energy to enter his veins as he stole the little hero's quirk. But there was no power nor energy. He was so confused. That's when his mind suddenly felt like he was being warped into somewhere. He was confused as an image of a blood-stained rooftop flashed in his mind. What confused him even more is a figure standing by the edge of the building. What the? He thought as the figure turned around to face him. The figure radiated the aura of a predator that had just seen its prey. The aura that All for One usually radiates towards his victims. You're not Izuku. The figure said. A scrutinizing look can be felt by the villain as claws formed on the figure's hands. Leave, the figure said as he charged forward, sharp blades piercing through All for One. That shook the villain off his stupor as he was brought back to reality. The young man was still in his hand, clutching his hand, trying to break free. He stared at the boy with a frown on his face. Not being able to take the boy's powerful quirk was unfortunate, but he had to move on. HMPH. Useless, he said to Izuku as he unceremoniously tossed the boy to the ground, near the brawlers' mutilated bodies. Since you have no use for me, he started as he summoned his quirks while floating upward. Then die. Muscular Enhancement X4, Locomotive Corkscrew, Sharpness X4, Piercing X3, he mentally commanded as his hand began to mimic a drill. Goodbye, Blackwatch, he said as he flew towards Izuku's shaking form at full speed. All Might looked on in horror at what the villain was planning to do to his student. He had to do something. No, he needs to do something. He's a hero for fuck's sake. He can't let another person dear to him die by the hands of that monster. Master, please give me strength, he thought. Despite his body trembling as the limit of his quirk was pulling him down to the ground, he pushed forwards. Using the remaining embers of his quirk to his legs, he ran forward. Gran Torino yelled out towards him, but he ignored it as he ran. He ran and ran, and ran and ran, closer and closer and closer and closer. The world seemed to slow down as he came in between them. His life flashes before his eyes. The mistake he had made in telling Izuku that he can't be a hero without a quirk, the grief he had felt the moment All for One had taken his master from him, and the happy moments he had felt in Ua as the teacher of such heroic young boys and girls. But even with all of that, he stood tall. Looking up, he saw Izuku's face, shocked at his sudden appearance. Even though I already apologized to you, I am very sorry for not believing in you, young Izuku. Before he knew it, All for One's fist punched through his chest. Everyone, even All for One, was stunned at All Might's actions. All Might's limp body slid off the villain's arm and dropped in front of Izuku, who just stared at the number one hero's lifeless body, a gaping hole in his chest cavity. Tears flowed down his freckled cheek as blood coming from All Might's wound began to make contact with his feet. The man just took the bullet for him, an attack that was sure going to kill him, even with his enhanced quirks. His breath hitched as he touched All Might's sunken eyes and closed the man's eyelids. As soon as he did that, he gritted his teeth as his eyes glared towards the man responsible for his hero's death. You, he said as Blacklight shot out of his body and stabbed towards the brawler's body as he stood up from his spot. It took a few seconds for the brawlers to be fully consumed. Eyes glowing red under pitch black sclers radiated pure hate and anger as biomass began wrapping around his body. I will kill you. The biomass continued to cover him from head to toe until he was now covered in a thick and sharp exoskeleton with red pulsing veins radiating heat as his claws, now imbued with a darker shade, formed. Izuku looked down at his new form briefly before looking back at the villain with as much hate as he could muster. Screw being viewed as a murderer. Screw being viewed as a monster. Screw being viewed as a villain. He was going to kill All for One, as painfully as he possibly can, and no one in this world is going to stop him. A gloom, somber atmosphere surrounds the air as the unforgiving rain falls from the cloudy ceiling that is the sky. The dark sky seems to match the emotions welling within the mind of one Izuku Midoriya. Standing in the middle of Japan's hero cemetery, he was looking down a specific tombstone while his face opted for a look filled with guilt, regret, and a hint of anger. Carved on the smooth, black granite tombstone is the name of the person he had failed to protect. The person who he was unable to save. On the pristine, charcoal stone, surrounded by white flowers, posters from his fans, and a lone picture in front, was etched with the following words. Here lies our beloved number one hero, the symbol of peace. A teacher, a friend, and a brother. Toshinori. All Might, Yagi. Nothing is nobler than self-sacrifice. You will be missed, my friend. Izuku read the words carved on the stone, eyes forming tears that refused to fall down, not caring if he was getting drenched by the continuously falling rain. It had been a week since All Might's death, but it felt like it all just happened yesterday. The pain of seeing the fist pierce through the man's torso was etched into the young man's mind, haunting him in his dreams and whenever he closed his eyes. It was his fault. It was all his fault that Japan's greatest hero had died, on live television no less. Even with those around him telling him that it wasn't his fault, he knew too damn well that it was him and his plan who had caused All Might's demise. Just thinking about All Might's sudden death made it hard for him to breathe with the seething rage he had on himself. He would always think to himself, what worth of his powerful quirk and the copied ones in his arsenal if he was unable to use them to protect someone when needed the most? What's the point of having an overpowered ability if I can't even save All Might from All for One's sadistic hands? All for One, the other person responsible for All Might's death. The very person who had hunted, tormented, and according to All Might, had killed everyone for All User, the number one hero being the most recent one. Just the thought of the fucking shit stain would always made Izuku's blood to boil. Even after killing the villain wasn't enough to quench the anger within Izuku's heart and mind. Flashback. A week ago, heavy pants can be heard from within the exoskeleton of Izuku's armor. Despite his eyes being hidden under the armor's helm, All For One could feel the rage and potent killing intent that the young man is sending his way. The sheer intensity of the hate and anger that the Blacklight user is radiating made those watching this scene play out shiver and shake in fear. They could easily excuse that for watching All Might's gruesome, sudden death, but something tells them that it's much more than that. All For One, levitating up ahead, observed the young man with interest, mainly the activation of a new ability. It was unfortunate that he was unable to steal it, though that caused him to wonder. Why can't he steal it? Through the years of his existence, he had successfully stolen various quirks, may it be an emitter, transformation, or even mutation types. But Midoriya's quirk was an enigma to him. Not only was he unsuccessful in taking the quirk for himself, he was also pulled into the boy's mind. What confuses him further was the fact that he saw someone else inside the boy's mind. Who in the world was that man? And why was he inside Midoriya's mind? His inner thoughts were suddenly interrupted when Izuku spoke up. You. The young hero started, causing All For One to face his direction. You killed him. You will pay. The hate in the boy's voice was eminent, which caused All For One to smirk in amusement. Before he could respond, he felt the right side of him rise in temperature. Without a word, he sent a wind blast towards the right as the flames. From the tiny holes on Izuku's armor, he was able to see the flame hero's arrival. The usual scowl etched on the number 2 hero's face being sent to the levitating villain. Beside him was the ninja hero, Edgeshot, who was wearing a neutral expression before he saw All Might's body. Endeavor looked away from All For One to Izuku's direction. What are you? He paused as he now just saw the lifeless body of the number 1 hero. Izuku watched as a shocked expression morphed the scowl off the number 2. All For One turned to the new arrivals and hummed. Although they were all mediocre, he started as he leaned his head towards the hero's direction. To have taken care of the Nomu already. It's to be expected from the man that ascended to the 2nd rank. The villain watched as Endeavor the villain just stared at All Might's body. You like what you see, Endeavor? Be thankful, for I removed the obstacle to your goal of becoming number 1, he said. Without a word, Endeavor's flames grew as he looked up at the villain's direction. The faceless man hummed in interest as black lightning began to spark on his left hand and pointed it at the number 2 hero. As he was about to shoot Endeavor, he was forced to dodge Edgeshot's attack. Dodging to the side, he heard Endeavor fly towards him, a large blazing flame surrounding him. Before the attack could hit, he summoned his own fire and sent it towards Endeavor, who barely blocked it. Looking down the field, he noticed the rising hero that is Kamui Wood swooping in, using his quirk to retrieve Best Jeanist and Mount Lady's unconscious bodies, while Tiger, the brawn of the wild pussycats, with Ragdoll on his arm, safely removes a civilian under the rubble. That civilian was the same one All Might had taken the hit for that led to his true form being exposed to the world. From the height he is levitating on, he could hear the distant cheers from a few blocks away and it caused him to click his tongue. Avoiding another swing from Edgeshot's attacks, he spoke up. How annoying, he said as he sent a massive wind blast towards the ground. Said attack had forced the rest of the heroes to be sent flying in different directions. Heroism and self-sacrifice. What a joke, he said as his right arm began shifting and pulsing. Locomotive corkscrew, explosiveness x4, muscular enhancement x3, multiplication, hypertrophy, rivet, airwalk, bone spear. The shockwaves up until now have been to wear down your strength. Nothing lethal. But now, he said as he turned to Izuku's direction, who hadn't moved an inch, unflinching at the shockwaves the villain had sent down. I will strike you down, he said as his arms transformed into a grotesque amalgamation of hands, muscles, and bones protruding out of its sockets. Without another word, the villain blasts forward with his enhanced fist aiming for Izuku's head. Said young man didn't make a move and just stared at the incoming attack. The impact of the attack caused a cloud of smoke, dust, and debris to fly all over the place, causing those near its epicenter to cover their eyes. Even the helicopter watching over from the sky couldn't see anything. Everyone waited in anticipation, even those in their homes. Class 1A looked on as they consoled a sobbing Melissa Shield. Having just witnessed her uncle might die, while Katsuki held onto Eri while Inko lay down on the sofa, having just passed out from dehydration from crying too much. The UA staff have lowered their heads at the loss of the number one hero. Even Aizawa was saddened. Their eyes widened when the dust cloud dissipated and the camera broadcasting the Kamino fight refocused. Back to Kamino, the dust settled to show All for One's fist being blocked by Izuku's clawed hand. All for One resisted a flinch in pain as his grotesque limb began slowly crumbling. If he had eyes right now, they would have been as wide as plates right now. Decay? Impossible. How? He thought. Panicking, All for One tried to pull his fist off of the boy's hand only for him to be pulled forward and be thrown towards the side. He was sent tumbling through debris, glass, and dirt. Shakily, All for One tries to raise himself off the ground, wincing at the pain his decaying right arm is experiencing. Pushing off the quirks he activated, he pushed in a regeneration quirk on the wound and gritted his teeth as he realized that he was only healing it slowly. Even with super regeneration, the damage of the quirk is way too potent. Turning towards Izuku's direction, he noticed that the boy's claws began shifting, with his left hand turning back to normal while his right hand morphed into his blade. Before he could speak up, Izuku cut him off. "Enough of your fucking weird, fucking rambling shit," the armored young man glacially said, eyes glowing red. "You've dealt too much pain to those around you. Now you meet your end," he said as he bolted forward. A blast of explosion erupted from his feet, increasing his speed. "And your end is me." In just a blink of an eye, pain exploded from All for One's exposed shoulder as blood gushed out of the wound. The suddenness of the attack had caused him to plummet back down to the ground. He gritted his teeth, he clutched his bleeding shoulder as he tried to heal it with a regeneration quirk he had, only for a small blade to pierce through his left shoulder blade. He was then pulled towards Izuku, who performed a corkscrew flip and released All for One, which sent the villain flying. Izuku quickly morphed his arms into his tendrils as it sent it towards the villain, wrapping all around the man's body. With all his strength, he pulled the man back to the ground. The impact caused a large crater with All for One in the middle of it. Barely moving, he could hear heavy footsteps walking towards him. The footsteps stopped directly at his side. Before he could talk, a hand clutched his neck and lifted him up. The grip was hard and made him choke out as his remaining hand tried its best to hold on tight at the person's arm. Feeling his throat getting crushed, he choked out, "Who, or why you?" He felt himself being pulled near the person's side, shivering at the cold feeling of the exoskeleton as it brushed over his exposed head. "I am Izuku Midoriya," the man whispered coldly in his ear. "The reincarnation of Alex Mercer." Alex Mercer. Why does that name sound familiar? He thought as a faint memory entered his mind. An image of him in his younger self, after killing the owner of the first recorded quirk bearer, flying past a place filled with blood and guts covering the ground as monstrosities being caused chaos as a person could be seen perched in a building, looking down the chaos in the streets below. Before he could even continue the memory, a clawed hand pierced his chest, snapping him out of his trance. He cried in pain as he turned back to Izuku, who whispered again in his ear, "And I am the top of the food chain." Those were the last words he heard. Izuku raised his left hand and began stabbing the man in the chest. He could feel the man's chest cavity crack on impact, spraying blood all over him, but he didn't care. He stabbed him again. And again, and again, and again, and again. Those watching the scene stopped themselves throwing up their guts. They were shocked at the sheer violence of the action. Is this how a hero should be? Until the carcass in his hand was no longer identifiable. With one strong grip, he crushed the man's neck. As soon as he did that, red and black tendrils wrapped around the mutilated pile of flesh and absorbed it into his body, alongside the blood covering him. Dash 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 dash. Within Izuku's mind, All for One materialized once more with a frown on his face. He was back in the same spot as he was just a few moments ago. The first time was when he had attempted to steal the green-haired boy's quirk. Right now, he couldn't remember how or why he was in here in the first place. His frown changed into a smirk. But this is a good chance to take over the boy's body and make it his vessel. A body with an extremely powerful quirk with a variety of weapons and abilities. Only thing he needs to do is wait patiently until the boy's mental strength is weakened before taking advantage of it. Yes, that would be a brilliant plan. And no one will be able to stop him. Are you sure about that? A familiar voice said from the side. Turning, his eyes widened at the sight of the same figure he saw back when he tried to steal the boy's quirk. Looking closely at the man, he recognized him. He was the man from his memories. The person that was on that rooftop. Alex Mercer. All for One said, taking a step back as for the first time in his life, he felt fear. In the flesh, Alex replied, a smirk appearing on his face. Now what was that about taking over Izuku's body? He said Claws was summoned. All for One's cries of pain distorted within Izuku's mindscape as Alex did a reenactment of how Izuku had killed the symbol of evil. With that, All for One was no more. Both physically and spiritually, and most importantly, permanently. Memories flooded Izuku's mind, but he ignored it all as he released his armor and walked towards All Might's body. Staring down at the symbol of Peace's lifeless body, Izuku crouched down as he picked up All Might in a bridal carry. With a blank look on his face, Izuku began walking out of the destruction. He ignored Endeavor and Gran Torino, who just looked at him with a shocked expression. He walked in a straight line, until he was out of the destroyed portion of Camino. He blinked as flashes of light came from every direction. Looking around, he saw news journalists pointing cameras at him. Among the crowd, he saw Naomasa Tsukauchi, squeezing his way through the crowd. The police detective's eyes widened at the sight of his friend's lifeless body. There was a lone tear that exited the detective's eye as he removed his fedora and placed it on his chest with his head lowering. While that was happening, Izuku turned towards a camera and noticed a red light on it. Holding All Might closer to him, he glared at the camera, unintentionally making the person holding it flinch. Knowing he was watching, he gritted his teeth and spoke up. Tamura Shigaraki, you're next. End of flashback. As the memory ended, he looked down at his hands and clenched them. Despite the feeling of anger he had been experiencing not only for All for One, but also himself, he couldn't change the fact that All Might is gone. Even with all the strong quirks in his arsenal, even with the enhanced healing factor and literally centuries worth of experience that he has, it was still not enough. He was still not enough. He failed to save someone. He failed as a hero. After the events in Camino, he made it his goal to avoid any confrontation with his classmates, especially Melissa. He couldn't bear to look at her eyes without breaking down in tears. He couldn't look at them as he felt that he was useless. With him brutally and inhumanely killing All for One on live television, he wouldn't be surprised if he was treated as a villain, a murderer, and a monster. He knew that it was all his fault, and with it all started back in the camp. He experienced and confirmed it the time when Mandalay slapped him after he had visited Ragdoll in the hospital and told him to leave. She then blamed him for Ragdoll's quirk getting stolen. He didn't argue with her nor defend himself, he just whispered an apology and left the hospital. She was right, anyway. It was all his fault. His self-loathing was interrupted when a pair of hands wrapped around his waist. That's when a familiar warmth enveloped him. "Our Rumi?" he asked as he could feel her nodding from behind. "Izuku," he heard her whisper in his ear with her hold on him tightening. "It's okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel pain," she said as she released him from her hug and made him turn around. Izuku's head was lowered with the hood of his hero costume covering it. Her hands reached out for his hood and pulled it down. "Just for now, don't be a hero. Don't be Blackwatch. Be yourself. Be Izuku Midoriya," she said as she wiped a tear that had leaked out his eyes. For the first time since he had gotten his quirk, Izuku Midoriya was vulnerable as he collapsed into her arms and cried. "I failed. I failed to save All Might," he whispered as he held onto her as if his life depended on it. I couldn't." His words were drowned out as the rain fell down at the duo, with the rabbit hero not caring if she were to become drenched in rain. It was uncharacteristic for her usually brash and overzealous attitude and being awkward when it came to comforting civilians, but a person close and important to her was distraught, and as a hero, she couldn't let that go. She hugged him tightly and patted his head and caressed his hair, whispering words of comfort and promising that everything will be all right. In the distance, Aizawa can be seen under an umbrella. He watched as Mirko comforted his student. It was him who had called the rabbit hero to comfort Midoriya. Since the young hero had been avoiding everyone, even his own mother and Eri after All Might's death. Add in the fact that Mandalay, due to the mental stress and with Ragdoll getting her quirk stolen, had blamed Izuku for it. Something that Aizawa had scolded the heroine for. The heroine saw her mistake and tried reaching out to Izuku to apologize, but the problem child had distanced himself to those around him. Being the person to vouch for him and is the reason that the 1A class president became the youngest hero, Aizawa thought that she would be a logical choice to help reach out to his student. Plus the fact that she was the one that reached out to him despite her not believing in teaming up. And by the looks of it, he made the right decision. One last look at the rain-drenched duo, Aizawa began walking away towards a nearby parked car. Entering it, he sat in the driver's seat. As soon as he had his seat belt on, he spoke up. "So what do you think we should do next?" he asked. On the back seat, Nezu could be seen sitting with a cup of tea and a coaster on each hand as the principal took a sip. "For now, nothing. Not until young Izuku is feeling better," the rodent man said. "If he is willing for a talk, we will inform him of an offer that the commission has sent us due to the alarming rise of villain attacks around Japan after the loss of All Might." Aizawa hummed. "I still don't trust the commission or whatever they want with Midoriya," he said as he started the car, remembering back when he was still in middle school that a member of the commissions tried to offer him for hero training, due to his quirk, but luckily he declined. He had a gut feeling that accepting that offer would have been a bad call. "I do too at first," Nezu said, remembering a faint memory of his being experimented on as a child by one of the members in the commission before outsmarting his captors to release him. But remembering that there was a new president calling the shots, he was leaning towards hearing them out. After a brief silence, they drove back to UA High. There was still paperwork to be done regarding Izuku's status as a student and a hero. The latter will only be figured out after hearing what the commission is offering. For now, they hope for Izuku's fast mental and emotional recovery. Green eyes looking down the polished bluestone floor is what the UA staff witnessed as Izuku Midoriya entered the conference room. They could see the nervousness and guilt in the young man's eyes. They could sympathize with him. They also feel the pressure of losing All Might, a coworker and also a friend to some of them. But they have no time to mourn as they have much to discuss. "Young Izuku, I am glad that you were able to join us today. Have a seat," Nezu said, as he ushered Izuku to sit down on a vacant chair. Izuku didn't make any move nor looked over at the chair being offered to him as he looked up straight towards the chimera, who he saw was pouring tea on an empty teacup. Observing the slight shaking in the principal's hand as he poured his drink, Izuku could tell that the man-rat was feeling nervous. It was subtle but still noticeable if you really focused on it. As he looked up to the principal, he noticed two other figures by him. Beside him was a middle-aged woman with a stoic expression wearing a black suit jacket and dress, along with a purple shirt and necklace. She has slicked back ash blonde hair and a set of turquoise eyes. Behind the woman was a lanky middle-aged man with beige, chin-length, messy hair. Izuku could see that the man was wearing a black formal suit and white undershirt and black loose tie. The man's eyes have noticeable eye bags akin to those of Aizawa's. Seeing Izuku noticing the other two, Nezu spoke up, catching the young man's attention. "This is the president of the Hero Public Safety Commission. She is here to join us as we talk about your future not only as a hero, but also your status here as a hero course student. We would also like to talk about the aftermath of the Camino incident," the president said. The Blacklight user flinched at the mention of that and made him lower his head. His quirk-enhanced anxiety began to torment his mind. The woman also looked at Izuku with a look as if she was studying him, maybe even judging him. Which didn't help. "So this is it, huh? The end of my hero career? They're going to arrest me now, huh? Why am I surprised? I just killed, no, slaughter someone in live television for the entirety of Japan to see." Seeing the distress in the young man's face, the president spoke up once more. "There is no need to worry about it, Izuku Midoriya. Despite the graphic elimination of All for One, I can assure you that you did the right thing. Even if it is fueled with vengeance and intense emotion," the woman stated. That caused confusion on Izuku's part. What?" he said, unintelligently. Nezu chuckled at his reaction. I believe that what Madam President is talking about is that your actions during the Camino Ward raid will not affect your early induction as a hero. Since your actions are seen as an impulse to eliminate the threat before he goes on a widespread killing spree. He said, before adding. That an endeavor took the fall for you. Izuku blinked at that. He was about to ask what that even means, when another voice spoke up. Turns out, Endeavor took the blame for planning the raid and publicly said that it was him who gave you orders to kill All for One after the villain killed All Might. There was venom in the man's voice when he mentioned All for One. Looking over at the owner of the voice, he saw Naomasa Tsukauchi sitting beside Aizawa. The police detective gave him a reassuring smile. Why would he take the blame? Izuku asked. Disbelief can be heard in his voice. It was me who planned the raid. Why would he? He was cut off when Tsukauchi spoke up again. I believe he did it to protect your name, he said, causing Izuku to look at him with a confused look. From what I gathered, Mr. Number 2, despite his temperance and intimidating stature, he respects you in some shape or form and sees potential in you. Blinking in surprise, Izuku was flabbergasted. Who would have thought that the man he had butt heads with during the sports festival was the one saving his ass during this time? There was a cough that made Izuku look straight to the front. Now that that's out of the way, let us begin with the original point of this meeting. The man behind the president said. Madam President nodded and looked at Izuku with a serious expression. I will cut to the chase, Izuku Midoriya. The woman started. After All Might's untimely demise, crime and villainy had increased rapidly. The man behind the president began tapping something on his tablet as a hologram appeared in the center of the room. Within the hologram, Izuku could see screens of villain attacks all around the country. As you can see, villain attacks had amped up to 10 as in their words, the biggest threat is now gone. Naomasa spoke up. The police had also been deeply affected as attacks on our ranks had become frequent. The destruction and chaos happening throughout Japan. It shocked him how quick All Might's death had caused villains to grow bold and fearless. All of this just happened in such a short time period. Not to mention the Meta Liberation Army beginning to make their presence known. Aizawa spoke up as the hologram shifted to show a group of villains. The one that caught Izuku's attention is a man with a long, pointy nose. From the presence the man gives, he could tell that the man was the group's leader. If he had a nickel for every time he saw a villain leader with a pointed feature, he'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. Before he could say anything, Nezu spoke up. With the loss of the symbol of peace, villains are wreaking havoc. He said. Japan is in desperate need of another symbol. He paused to take a sip of his tea before looking back at Izuku. And I believe that that symbol needs to be you, the rodent said, causing Izuku's eyes to widen. Madam President continued. Yes, I believe so as well. Even though I do not condone overly violent approaches in stopping villains nor using such a young man as you for this type of missions, but we are desperate to stop these villains from destroying the country entirely. Izuku watched her sigh before continuing. But this is the only way, seeing how you dealt with All for One, she said as she looked him in the eye. Izuku Midoriya, as the president of the Hero Public Safety Commission, I wish that you were to graduate early here in UA and be sent to the field to stop the villains from further terrorizing our country in any way you see fit. Feeling the atmosphere thicken, Izuku took steady breaths as he looked away. See, can I think about it? He asked in a whisper, loud enough for the people in the room to hear. Nezu and the president looked at each other before back at the green-haired lad and nodded simultaneously. Okay then, we'll have a 15-minute break. I hope that is enough time for you to give us your answer, the bear dog rat man said. He nodded. Excuse me, then, Izuku whispered as he turned around and walked out of the door. As soon as the door closed, there was an awkward silence that sliced through the room. The tension was eminent as Nezu sighed. Is it really wise for us to do this at a time like this? Young Izuku had not fully recovered from witnessing All Might's death. Is it a right thing to give him this much pressure in such a short notice? The Chimera asked, his voice ringing with concern. It was the president's turn to sigh. Like I said earlier, I am not fond of using such a young lad for this mission, similar to how my predecessor had failed Lady Nagant, but it is inevitable. You saw how maniacal some of the villains are in the clips that I showed you. He paused to look at the cup of tea she was given. I don't want that to continue and have more innocent lives taken. We are in need of a new symbol. She paused as she looked up. And it doesn't matter if it is for peace or fear. The moment Izuku exited the door of the conference room, he released a breath that he didn't know he was holding. Feeling the tension being washed out of his system, he decided to go for a walk. Placing his hands in his pockets, Izuku began walking through the empty hallways of the usually crowded building. Makes sense since it was a weekend. Walking aimlessly through the hallway, he thought back on the discussion back in the conference room. That discussion gave him a lot of questions to think about. Like, why would Endeavor take the bullet for him? How severe is the damage the villains have done to Japan? Should he accept the mission? Could he even pull it off? What happens if he declines? Would the villains be stopped? What would All Might think about this situation? He was unsure. Izuku Midoriya, the so-called master manipulator and strategist of Class 1A, was unsure what to do next. What to do? What to do? He trailed off as he took a left turn. As he did so, he bumped into someone, causing both of them to fall to the floor. Izuku quickly said, "Sorry," in reflex as he quickly stood up. As he looked over at the person he collided with, his eyes widened as he saw 13 without her hero costume. Around her was scattered on the floor. Quickly helping the rescue hero up, he bowed down to pick up the paper scattered on the floor as he apologized to her repeatedly. The space-themed heroine just waved off his apology. He then offered to help her with carrying the documents to the teacher's lounge, despite the heroine's initial refusal. They quietly walked towards their destination. Reaching the teacher's lounge, Izuku placed the documents on her table as she thanked him for helping out. They talked for a while until 13 noticed the distress in Izuku's eyes. Midoriya. Are you okay? Is something wrong? She asked. The greenette looked at her with a forced smile. Yeah, I'm okay. Just unsure, he said as he gave her a tidbit of the discussion that was made in the conference room. As Izuku spoke, 13 just listened. She knows that Izuku needs to let go of the pressure that he was feeling, and she thought that talking to someone might help. And besides, she kinda knew about this topic from this morning when Nezu briefed them of what's to come when the president of HPSC arrived at UA. What should I do? Izuku said, trailing off as he looked down on his feet. What would All Might do? I think. She started, making Izuku turn her way. I think you should stop thinking like All Might and what he would do in your situation, and start thinking like what Izuku Midoriya would want to do, she said. She could see Izuku's eyes widened, but he didn't say anything. Taking that as a sign to continue, she continued. Back in the USJ, I heard that you helped your classmates escape the flood zone by encouraging them to make use of their quirks. It was you back there who thought of the plan to get out because that's what you do best. You have a strong, creative mind, Midoriya. I understand that you still feel guilty about All Might's death, and I respect that, she said as she placed a hand on his shoulder. But instead of blaming and doubting yourself, you should believe in yourself, on who you truly are, she said as she stood up. That way, you will find out what kind of hero you truly wish to become, she said as she walked towards the door. But before she could leave, she looked back at him and smiled. But whatever your decision is, remember that we all will be behind you, supporting you. And with that, the space hero had left the teacher's lounge as Izuku was left with his thoughts. Who you truly are, he thought as he looked down his hand as his quirk began to sprout from his palms. I'm you and your ME. He remembers Alex say back at the first time he met his past self. He is Izuku Midoriya. He is also Alex Mercer, or rather the reincarnation. But still, he is Izuku Midoriya as well as Alex Mercer. The prototype. Zeus. Blackwatch. Mercer. He is a killer, a monster, and most importantly, he is a hero. Standing up from his seat, he began walking to the door and made his way back to the conference room. He had decided on what he would do, on what he should do. For his mom, for Eri, for his classmates, for his teachers, for All Might, for Alex Mercer, and most importantly, for himself. Entering the conference room, his arrival was quickly noticed by the people inside, but they noticed an obvious change in his demeanor. One of determination and confidence. Before they could ask him of his decision, he spoke up. I, Izuku Midoriya, Mercer, formerly known as the Adaptive Hero, Blackwatch, accept the assignment for the peace of Japan, he said, as he used disguise to shift to his hero costume. He then continued. But I believe that I can't do this alone. If I may, I would like to recruit some allies for help. Madam President's eyebrow was raised as Izuku said that. Curious, she asked. Who do you have in mind? Her question was met with a smirk from the young man. Looking up at the full moon, Izuku, who was on the rooftop of the 1A dorm, closed his eyes with a sense of calm as his hood fell to the cool breeze of the night. It had been a week since the meeting and his allies had been contacted to aid him in his mission to stop villains from destroying Japan. Even with his strength and power, it would be impossible for him to stop every villain on his own without causing another pandemic, as he had done so in the past, twice. Opening his eyes, he smiled. So you came, huh? He said as he turned to look behind him. Sorry for such a short notice. I just want to talk before I leave for tonight. Tonight was the team's first patrol and villain hunt. The person gave him a smile. No need to apologize. He could see the sadness in the person's eyes as they looked down. So tonight's your first night out, huh? He nodded. Yeah. I'm here to say goodbye, he said as he looked up once again. Couldn't you just say that in front of everyone else? They asked. That caused Izuku to look down before sighing. I still can't. He said. I still can't face her. The person in front of him held his hand and gently squeezed it. I understand, they said. But you should really talk to her when you're ready, she really needs you. Nodding, he smiled softly. I know, he said as he looked them in the eyes as his smile widened. By the way, about the kiss back in the camp, he said, immediately causing the person to blush like a tomato. What about it? Izuku chuckled at her and used his fingers to tilt their chin up as he leaned forward for a kiss. As soon as their lips touched, they both melted into it as they held onto each other like lifelines. With passion and love, they feel themselves heating up, and that is dangerous. Not wanting to go too far, Izuku gave her one last kiss before leaning back. Their faces flushed as the moonlight shone in their eyes. Izuku gave her a tight embrace and took a step backwards. Take care of Mom and Eri for me, okay? He said, earning a nod from her. I'll see you again soon, he said as he jumped off the rooftop and used his glide to fall down quickly. Goodbye for now, Kyoka. Landing on a roll, Izuku walked towards the gate. The moment he exits that gate, his fate will forever change. Taking one last look at UA, he smiled. I'll be back, I promise, he thought as he ran out of the gates to meet his new life as an underground hero. A month after All Might's death, the streets that were once known for the bustling sounds of people chattering and traffic noise, now littered with broken shards of glass, chunks of debris, and villains causing havoc. The death of the symbol of peace had caused a massive shift in the hero society. Without All Might's inspiring presence, the public began to doubt the heroes for their safety and well-being. This in turn caused the villain count to rise tenfold throughout Japan. It was overwhelming, even for the high-ranking heroes. After All Might death, there was no more symbol of peace, no more hope. Only left is chaos and pain. As the villains continued to cause destruction in the streets, in a very familiar rooftop, a hooded figure could be seen crouching in the edge of said building. Their eyes focused and observed the chaos ensuing in the streets below. Like a twist of fate, Izuku Midoriya found himself on top of the very rooftop where his journey had started. It was the same rooftop where he had asked All Might the question, can a quirkless person be a hero like you? The same rooftop where All Might had rejected his dream. The very rooftop he jumped off of. The fall that caused him to meet his past self, Alex Mercer, and gained the power of the virus now turned quirk. How poetic for him to return to the very place that made his growth as a person and as a hero possible. He couldn't help but smile, despite the chaos occurring in his surroundings. His smile suddenly turned serious as he felt a presence arrive a few feet away from him. Without turning, Izuku spoke up. What's your status report? He said to the newly arrived figure. Tamura Shigaraki, inheriting All for One through Kyudai Garaki's experimentation, has been a success and is now in the state of recovery. Gigantomachia has been located in the mountain ranges near the location of Jaku General Hospital, the same hospital that Shigaraki is located in. The figure said without hesitation and paused for a bit before continuing. The Meta Liberation Army had made itself known in parts of the country. Izuku hummed at the information given to him. I see. He started to slowly stand up. Are there any MLA members nearby? He asked. Yes. There are a small group of them near Dagoba Beach Municipal Park. The young man hummed at this and nodded. Interesting. Thank you for the heads up, he said. The other man nodded. It is nothing. Izuku Midoriya. I am only doing what needs to be done to help you stop this ongoing chaos within the country, he said. Besides, it is the least I can do for you to help me. For now, I will be taking my leave. We don't want any of the other members of the league to notice our rendezvous. The man said. Good luck to you, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku felt the man's presence leave as he smiled. Thank you, Oboro, he said as he looked back down at the villains terrorizing the streets. My name is Izuku Midoriya. I'm the reason for all of this. Memories of All Might's death entered his mind as he clenched his fists, unconsciously channeling his quirk. They call me a killer, a murderer, and a monster. He looked down at the villains, who were still oblivious to his presence and the killing intent that he was radiating. He watched as the villains used their quirks and destroyed everything in their wake. Their laughter and yells echoed as their quirks fired through an abandoned store and shattered its glass window. I'm all of these things. A couple of footsteps came from a few feet behind Izuku, almost the same spot where Oboro had been. They think they're in control. They have no idea what I am capable of. Hey, Mercer. Are you ready for this? A female voice spoke up, causing Izuku to turn in their direction. There he saw his companions standing there. Some of them leaned on the nearby wall, while some smirked at him. He looked at them one by one. Chizome Akaguro, Kendo Rappa, Rumi Usagiyama, Kana Tsutsumi. All looking at him and waiting for his orders. He looked back at the villain below and raised his hood over his head. He turned back to his companion and gave them a determined yet intimidating look. I am Izuku Midoriya. I am Mercer. I am a killer, a murderer, a monster. I may not be the symbol this society wants, but I am the symbol it hopelessly needs. I am the symbol of fear. And right now, I was made for this, he said, green eyes turning blood red as he jumped down the building, his quirk manifesting as he let gravity pull him down. Izuku Midoriya was so confused. Well, that is a massive understatement. He was sure he was jumping from rooftop to rooftop before a flash of light forced him to cover his eyes, but after blinking, he was suddenly here in USJ, face to face with Nomu once more. His confusion grew when two figures landed on each side of him. Turning to the figures, his eyes widened when he saw himself. Albeit in different clothes and hair color, with equal confusion and shock. He also noticed another of himself, standing alongside his classmates, but was wearing their gym uniform instead of a hero costume. Only one thing came into his mind when he realized there were 4 Izukus in the place. What the foo? The end. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Now we will see you in the next video.